Mr. Skyler this week. Skyler Johnson, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing wonderful. Great. Thank you for hooking up with us and doing the show.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And we kind of wanted to bring you on, having some of the unique experiences that you've had in particular, and thought you could bring a good perspective to some of the talking points that we want to have today. But I just kind of want to introduce you to our audience to start, kind of get them to know you a little bit better. I know that you're really from the Rolla area primarily. That's where you grew up, right?
Yep. That is right. I'm sorry. I just realized my Steam is downloading stuff, so I don't want to. Let me cancel this out. There we go. That'll help. No video games for me right now. Oh yeah, man. So yeah, grew up in Rolla, like born and raised out in the sticks. I weirdly now live like 1,000 yards away from my childhood home, which is bizarre to me, but I'm really happy to be here. But yeah, I grew up out here and little country boy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you and I have probably had this conversation before. Of course, Skyler, I haven't revealed this yet. He's my brother-in-law, so we've had some personal conversations. But I think you kind of had shared in the same mindset as me. You didn't really, or at least at one point in your life, you weren't interested in moving back close to where you lived. You kind of were out striking on your own there for a little while, right? So
100%.
So, but now you are back where you live, which is kind of odd in that regard too.
It is. So like. And I don't know, you might be, or either one of you maybe can test this, but like, it's like, for me, it was literally like a switch got flipped in my brain the second we had a kid. Like, it was no longer like, what I always tell people was, I guess I'm gonna back it up and then I'll bring it forward. Tarantino it and then we'll go back. Okay, so when I go to college in Springfield, I get a degree in criminology. And I'm like, I'm going to be a cop. That's what I want to do. I'm going to be a good cop. I'm going to do all this great stuff, be all cool, you know. And ever since I was a little kid, I mean, we have pictures of me as like a 4-year-old with like some little sheriff's badge, like running around, you know, playing cops and robbers. Like, that's what I wanted. Right. And should I have gone and gotten a degree in it? Probably not, but hindsight's 20/20. And so I go from, I graduate from MSU there in Springfield, and I go to this career fair, like senior year or whatever, we had to go, and the sheriff's office from Johnson County, Kansas was there, and they were super squared away, and the guys were really cool, and they're like, look, man, we've got all these divisions, we put you through all this training, we pay really well, and you should apply. So I did. And they're like, yep, come up here, take this test. Come up here, take this test. Come up here, have an interview. So I did it and like kind of graduated, got this job, and then moved up to Kansas City. And I'm up there, and it's good. So, and again, I'm going to flash forward a little bit. But yeah, so I'm up there for 5 years. We have my first son, and the switch is flipped. And I'm no longer like drive fast, shoot guns, make arrests. It's I want to live. I choose life. To see my kid grow up, and I want to be close to my parents. So you know, and like those within the priorities.
Yeah, I
that's
there.
What we, you know, so
having that support system is invaluable too, especially when you have kids and that sort of thing. You know, fortunately and unfortunately, you know, so we have our support systems that we have, and we're very grateful for what we do have. And there are those that are, closer knit to their families in some regards, and they get perhaps maybe a little bit more support. But I've always noticed, at least from a spectator's point of view, your family is very tight. And I definitely want to commend your family for that.
Heck yeah,
because that's rare nowadays, quite frankly. I mean, I probably don't communicate with my family as much as you do with yours. Now, I know geographically you're closer, but,
Yeah, no, yeah, man, I absolutely commend them, because, like, they're super supportive, and, like, I mean, they were good enough that I wanted to come home, so, like, my parents, they actually have, so on the same county road, now we're getting into, like, crazy hillbilly territory now, because I'm across the road, my sister is down the road, and my younger sister just moved a little bit further down the same county road. Like, we're all just like, oh, hey, it's the Johnsons. We're all just like all stretched out.
So you guys got a Rolla compound down there.
Yo, straight up. Like, that's what's happening. Yeah. but I like it. It's good, like, it's good. And they're super great. And like you said, a support system's important, and we wanted to be close to it, and we're real happy to be here.
So I kind of talked about this on one of our episodes that we had, but kind of the switch that was for me, that same moment that you talked about, was kind of once I got set in my life, with, being married to Pam and having the kids and that sort of stuff. Forever I said I refuse to live in Ironton or anywhere close to it, and you can count Bismarck part of that, and all these other small towns.
Right.
And now I have a house, in Bismarck. So. Right. But, it's more about just being comfortable with yourself and your own skin, your family situation and all that. And, now I'm at the point I can live anywhere. I can live in a cardboard house if it makes everybody happy.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah, as long as you got your squad with you, right? Because that's what's important, yeah.
For sure.
It's crazy. Because, like you said,
so you alluded to this earlier, too. You went to school in Springfield.
Yes, sir, that's right. Springfield.
That's okay. Okay. Why Springfield? Because of the criminal justice program?
Yeah, so they had one there because I looked at going to, it was UMR at the time, and S&T now in Rolla. It's an engineering school. And, I'm not trying to sell myself short, but I'm not an engineer. Like, just not having it. And they don't have a criminology program, right? Yeah. So I was looking around, and I was like, what schools could I go to? And MSU had a good program, and I mean, first and foremost, they accepted me, so I was like, let's go. And so I went there and moved out and went to school. So it was a good experience. It was good.
And then you kind of talked to how you ended up in Kansas, because essentially a recruiting effort from Johnson County. Where's Johnson County geographically, so folks kind of know?
Sure. So if you take Kansas City, which sits on the border of Kansas and Missouri, Wyandotte County on the Kansas side is Kansas City, Kansas, like proper, and the next county south, so all the burbs, is Johnson County, Kansas. So that's where I was at. So there's like it's 11 cities in the county, and it's like, I mean, if you look at a map, it looks just like being in Kansas City, but it's not. So.
Sure.
It's kind of just like a giant metropolitan area, kind of like St. Louis. You know how you got like South St. Louis, and you know what I mean?
South County.
And stuff like that.
100%. That's exactly what it's like.
So relatively large population for Kansas.
Yeah. So it's, was it 400 or almost 500,000 people, I think, for the county when I was there. I could be getting that slightly off, but it's a lot. Hundreds of thousands of people. And big city, it's got, Olathe, Overland Park, Lenexa, Leewoods, most of Spring Hill, and a few other places, and then a few unincorporated areas that are just, outskirts of the city limits. And it's big. It's the second biggest agency in the state. I think it's Topeka or Wichita. I get them confused. Has a bigger force than we did, but past that, it was us. We're the next biggest agency with officers. So.
Yeah. So talk about some of the various positions and jobs that you had there with us. I'm sure you kind of started entry level, and then I know you took on some other jobs and roles there while you were there.
Oh, yeah. Entry level, that's a nice way to put it, because with a lot of sheriff's offices.
Swabbing the deck.
Yeah. So with the sheriff's office, and I remember one of the things they told us when we got there, because it was sheriff's department, it still is called the sheriff's department here, but it's sheriff's office because the sheriff's an elected position. They hold an office. It's not a department. It sounds like it's like an appointed thing. So when you hear me say sheriff's office, you're not like,
Sure.
this guy is trying to be special. That's just what it's supposed to be office. Anyhow, I get out there,
Yeah.
and a lot of
Right.
sheriff's like office setups are you start in the jail, and that is the same thing with these guys. So when you get hired, you go through, first up, the hiring process is like 6 months, and you go through,
Oh wow.
so interviews and psych evals because they don't want you to be a nutcase, which, I made it through,
Right.
so I guess I'm not crazy. They have,
Hey.
yeah, right. They've got, polygraph. That was an interesting experience. I had never done anything like that. And I guess I'm now going to stop and tell this little story, which is they laughed at me during the polygraph because they were like, hey, one, you fill out this huge questionnaire in this, like, desolate room. And it's a big, long questionnaire. And I'm like, have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever broken the law? Have you ever broken the law and not got caught? Have you ever stolen something and not got caught? Have you ever seen XYZ? Have you ever done XYZ? Have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? Have you ever talked to somebody that has done this? Have you ever tried the crazy amounts of stuff? And then you answer all those questions, and you go and you sit in this room, and they put this thing on your finger, and they put a thing across your chest. And you sit on this little pad that I guess measures like if you're clenching your butt, I guess. I don't know. And they do all this, and they have a thing. They have a thing that you look. There's a camera looking at your face, and then there's a few other things. Anyhow, and then they ask you all those questions that you just answered to basically try to catch you lying. Like you said, I never did this. Anyhow,
In a lie, right?
Right.
the point of this story, because this ties directly back to you guys. Did I just lose my sound?
Internet connection pooped out.
Oh, no.
Oh.
There we go. I'm back. You hear
Can
me?
you hear me?
Yes.
Right on. Yeah.
You got me? I got no video for you guys all of a sudden. I don't know. We're having a storm here, so that might have something to do with it. But as long as you can hear my voice,
I think it's probably on your end, the internet.
My bad, brother.
I can hear you.
Okay, as long as you can hear me, I'm gonna keep talking like nothing happened. Anyhow, so they go on and they
That's
ask
fine.
you these questions, right? They ask you these questions and like, oh, did you ever do this? Have you ever hurt anybody and not got caught? Have you ever hurt somebody and lied about it? And they asked, one of the questions I filled out and answered yes to was, have you ever stolen anything? Because in Arcadia Valley, when I was seeing Jenny, when I came down there, we bought ice cream at whatever it is, Town and Country that's in there. I think it's still there. And they didn't have any spoons like at their counter or whatever by the fried chicken stand. And I'm like, God dang it. And then so we're like, I don't want to buy 100 plastic spoons. So I went in there and I popped open this box and I took 2 spoons out of it and I closed it back and I put it back on the shelf. Anyway, so that came up in this polygraph, and that dude just laughed in my face. He's like, you were stolen something like that? He's like, what was it? I was like, a plastic spoon. And he's like, yeah, guy, that's not what we're talking about. And I'm like, okay. And I felt like an idiot, but what? I'm trying to be honest, you know? So, again, because like legitimately, like the whole law
At least you're
enforcement.
honest about it, right?
Yeah, you're trying to be. So the law enforcement path for me, like genuine, and I think it's like this for most people, even though guys you see on TV who are like, idiots and who are doing this dumb stuff, they all start out for the most part in like the right place. They all start out like wanting to help people, and you get people that whatever their dad didn't hug them or they got bullied in high school, so they're like, I'm gonna go be a cop.
Right.
It exists, I'm sure, but for the most part, their hearts are in the right place. But anyway, so that's part of the hiring process for them.
Yeah.
And I go through, and they send me the letter, and I'm living in Springfield, and they send me the letter saying, hey, you're hired. Show up here at this date. And it's like 3 weeks out. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
So I have to like we rented an apartment sight unseen, and just like packed up a U-Haul and drove there. And then I show up at their like training like office, and I'm like, hey, here I am. Train me. So, and they send you to the state academy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a commitment in itself too. Just being able to just pack up and just drop everything that you're doing. You know what I mean? Like that's
100%. Yeah, because they didn't say like, "Hey, are you okay with going to work like right away?" Like it took 6 months to get hired, and they're like, "Hey, 3 weeks later, you better be out here." I'm like, "Wow."
Right.
So, but it worked out, and it was good.
They didn't pay for. They didn't pay for any type of relocation expenses or anything like that
No,
for you, did
I
they?
think if you lived over a certain distance, you would get it.
I got you.
There's some guys came from out of state. People came from all over to work there. And so I get hired and I go,
Right.
and they do, it's like a little, they called it pre-academy. So you go and you go shoot a little bit. They kind of gauge your physical fitness to make sure you're not going to like embarrass the academy. They have you do a few different things to kind of gauge your like abilities, I guess. And then
Sure.
I go to the actual academy, and it's like, I think there's like 35 or something like that people in the class, and it's from all over the metro area. So not Kansas City itself, because they have their own academy. But then we've got all the cities in the county have somebody there, and there's like 9 or 10 of us from the sheriff's office there. And it's 6 months long, and it's sucked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sucked. Terrible.
So
It's
6
horrible.
months of academy, where do you go from there?
So you go out of the academy, you graduate, assuming you don't mess anything up, which I did not, thankfully, and you go for the sheriff's office. For everybody else, they go straight into FTO, which is FTO stands for Field Training Officer, but it's called FTO. It's your field training phase, and it's another 6 months. And so for us, we go to JTO, which was jail training, which is not that cool or fun.
Yeah.
And you go to the jail.
Yeah.
You have various officers assigned to you, and I ended up becoming a JTO later on down the road, and it was fine. But yeah, it's rough because you go in there, and I'll never forget, because it's the way the county's set up. The jail is, we had like 2,000 inmates across 2 jails, and the first time you go into a module,
Wow.
it's one officer, but you got an elevated desk. It's like 6 feet off the ground, not 6 feet, I don't know, 4 feet off the ground. It's direct supervision, which means you are in the day room with the inmates, the people. I mean, they're people. They're there, and it's you, and it's 64 of them, and you just kind of, you got to go and handle
I can
yourself.
kind of attest to that because I worked for the Department of Corrections for about 6 months, so I was a wing officer, so I can kind of level with you on that. That was
Sucks.
that was interesting time. It didn't work out for me.
Yeah, man. No, so like, like you can probably
I know.
attest to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You're fine. I was just going to say, I know that the jail aspect of it wasn't the most alluring for you, and eventually you wanted to do some patrol work, and didn't you get a chance to do that?
Oh yeah, totally. I did a bunch of stuff. So I started out in the jail, and like essentially the jail is everybody starts there and everybody ends there. So it's a weird mix of like really, really new people, like, rookie or whatever you want to call them, brand new, and then guys and ladies who've been there for 20 years and they're just finishing their career out, because the sheriff's office takes your high 3 years of service, and that's what they base your retirement off of. So there's an endless overtime in the jail. You can work as many hours, as long as it's not 7 days straight, you can work as much as you want. And so you get these officers who are coming off from patrol and investigations and the courts and all this stuff, and they're just going to do 3 years in the jail and work as much OT as they can, because that's what their retirement's going to be based off of. So it's an interesting mix of people that are then kind of there. And basically, if you want to stay in the jail forever, you can, and some people do. I did not want to do that. I didn't want to work modules anyway, because like I said, you go in there and the first time all the doors unlock and the inmates come pouring out and they need everything from you, or they have all these problems and, street beef that they're going to try to handle in the day room, and everyone thinks they're cool, and it just like never ends. So I get tired of that.
Right.
But I go on and
a lot of dick measuring.
Yes, like non-stop. And this is one of those things that, like, I'm like, hey, I'll do what I got to do, but I'm going to get out of here, basically. So I went, and I got onto the transport team, where you say drive people around, take people to places. And I got a story. Remind me about this, because I'm going to come back with a story on this one. But I then get a lead officer position in the booking lounge at the Olathe Adult Detention Center. So booking lounge, have you ever seen the show American Jail? It's very similar. Yeah, it's super duper similar to that. So it's me as the lead. I have one deputy who's down there. They rotate through, is assigned with me. I have 3 civilians, and there's 1 sergeant who's supposed to be running the window. A lot of times the sergeant wants to go away because it's a non-stop nightmare the whole time that you're down there, but it's fun. Like, it's a good time. So I spent like a year or something doing that. And then as I was down there, I became training officer, so I would train people in booking because I had good training officers who showed me how to do it very efficiently. So then I started training other people, and eventually I kind of used that as a stepping stone to go to patrol. And there's a bunch of steps, because unfortunately it wasn't exactly what you knew, but kind of like who you knew, one of those situations. So I had to like, yeah, man. So I had to go like email the sergeant of patrol training, be like, hey, can I come out and like see what you guys do? And he's like, yeah. And then you go, like gotta not schmooze them, but they gotta like you, and then you come back and you gotta go do other stuff, and then you get to put in for it, and then you get a chance to go out, which I did, and I went out and completed my FTO program out there and had a great time. It was drive fast, shoot guns, you know what I'm saying? So it was cool.
Right. So tell me a transport story that you're holding back on us.
Oh man, I actually had 2. Maybe this was the same one. I get confused. So, anyhow, we could kind of tie this into like current event type stuff a little bit, which is right when I'm getting hired, which is 2011, end of 2011, and then I left the SO in 2016. So as I'm getting hired, that's when, like, maybe I'm out of academy, I'm done with jail training, I've been there for like 6 months, let's say. They're like, hey, we are getting body cameras, which is obviously, that's commonplace now, right? I mean, for the cops out there, but you guys have body cameras currently?
Right. We do not, actually.
You do not, okay.
Here locally.
Not the small departments, anyhow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, it was really interesting because you see, like, I remember, like, each crew had 1 camera to use, and whoever got assigned to wear it was the pariah. No one would talk to them. No one wanted to be around them because they didn't want everything to be said. Not because anyone's misbehaving, but because, like, everyone's running their mouth. Oh, the admin sucks. This schedule blows. So-and-so is a piece of shit. Like, it doesn't matter. But, and then flash forward to when I left, I wouldn't leave my locker without having that camera fully charged and on, because that thing is the sole greatest tool that I ever came across. That saved my bacon many times. Many times. Like, it's just, you cannot. Anyway, it's the best. Cameras are great. Cameras are amazing. So
because people can file formal complaints against officers, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And you can review that footage, and often that speaks to what action was and wasn't taken. So just to kind of further your point about saving your bacon.
Oh, yeah, totally. And it's one of those things, because at first, everyone's like, and it was kind of, because the command staff, so like lieutenants and up, lieutenants, captains, majors, sheriff, when we first got them, you know, they were if you had it on for 8 hours, guess what? They're watching 8 hours of footage. So, man, if you said something out of line, or if you, whatever, you know, chewing with your mouth open, they knew about it. And that kind of sucked. But then after a while, you don't think about it. And it's just huge. It's almost a relief, because people can say you did anything. People hate getting in trouble. Like, I hate it myself, but they do not like it. If they are caught doing something they're not supposed to do, they'll freak out and they'll say anything. So that kind of, this ties into my transport story, which is in the jail, you escort. So it means you basically, it's like a float. You walk around, you answer radio calls, you go help, you go do stuff, take people to the hospital, give people meal breaks, transport people. So the lieutenant comes to the radio and is like, hey, you know, so-and-so to an escort, come down here. So I go down there and like, hey, we need you to take somebody to Osawatomie State Hospital, which is it's a mental hospital is what it is. And I'm like, all right. I was like, no big deal. I've heard about people going there. It's fine. I can do that. And they're like, cool. And he's like, here's the deal. This lady, this young woman, he's like, every time we have contact with her, she says she got raped. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. But he's like, leave your body camera on. Yeah. Leave your vehicle camera on. Because you can turn it from facing forward to facing to the back. And he's like, leave it on the whole time
Yeah.
And, you log your mileage, and I don't know if you guys know that or not. When you transport, if there's any question, you should do it anyway. But if you transport mandatory, you transport a female or a kid or somebody, if there's something hinky going on, you log that mileage over the radio. You'll say, hey, I'm transporting blah, 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 so-and-so, female, starting mileage, and you give them mileage on your vehicle. And that way they can't say, like, oh, yeah, he pulled over here. Well, nuh-uh, I sure didn't. And you got GPS in your car, but they can be off or whatever. So you log that stuff.
Sure.
And anyway, so I'm taking this lady to Osawatomie State Hospital. It's the middle of the night. It was like 2 a.m. And I get there, and it's like off the highway. I'm following signs. And you get there, and it's straight up out of a horror movie. Oops. There's just like nothing but like these brick buildings with like bars on the windows, and it's starting to rain. And so like there's lightning flashing, and there's these giant oak trees, and there is not a person out there. Everything is pitch black. And I'm like, I'm going to die out here. So I have my spotlight in my car, my driver. Yeah, this is how horror movies start. So I'm going, I finally figure out where you're supposed to go. Anyhow, I take her down there, and I'm just happy to get rid of her because I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. And the lady, and it's also like a horror movie.
Right,
I walk into this big, like, brick building, and it's, like, dark as a cave, and at the far ass end of it, there's, like, a lady at, like, a desk with, like, a desk light, and she's just, like, sitting there, like, and I'm like, oh, my God. So I gotta walk this chick down, she's shackled up, right? So her legs are shackled, her hands are shackled, and and it's echoing, and I'm like, okay, take her down there. And then the lady's like, oh, security's busy with something. It's going to be a while till she can go to her unit. And I said, where's her unit? And they're like, oh, it's through this door and it's the next building back. I said, I'll take her. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, that was first mistake. Don't volunteer for stuff. Yeah. Kids at home listening, don't volunteer for things. Yeah. And so I go through this door out into the dark, and I see the building. It's pretty close. It's 100 yards, not even that, the concrete path. And as soon as I'm out that door and it closes, this chick turns. She's shackled. She turns and, like, wraps her legs around my legs, and, like, she's got a belly chain on, but she's grabbing my belt. There's my gun's on my belt, first up. So that's something you got to kind of be cognizant of, but I didn't think she could get it. And she hasn't done anything this whole time. She's screaming and yelling, and, like, grabbing me. I'm like, holy cow. So I'm like,
jeez.
I'm, like, prying her off me. And somebody comes out.
Get off of me, right?
Yeah, get off me. This happened all the time, unfortunately. People always grabbing on. But some guy finally comes, and we carry her into this building. The story's almost done. Sorry, it's kind of a long one. Carry her into this building, and old boy, it's in there. It's like an open air. They have locked doors, but it's an open air, like, I don't know what else to call it besides, like a mental ward. I think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So they're all, like, up. It's 3 a.m. They're all awake watching TV. There's a guy in the corner, like, whatever, eating checkers. And they're all crowding around me as I'm, like, dragging her, screaming across the floor to some room in the back. And I'm dragging, and, like, I bump into some guy who's, like, a patient. And I, like, stand up and, like, look at him, like, move, bro. And he's, like, real close to me. And he leans in real close, like, hey, man, I like your gun. I want one just like it. And I was like, this is going south.
Oh, my God.
Super quick. Anyhow, I drug her back there.
Real quick.
I get my restraints off of her, and I, like, slam the door as she's, like, coming at me, and, like, she can hear in there. Ah! So I'm just like, anyway, then I go back back to the station. So
wow.
So that's
our friend Brandon, who's in the military, he does prisoner transport, or at least he used to do prisoner transport for the military before he became a paralegal. And he would actually, and often in the situation was people that were actually in the military that were arrested or whatever the situation was, being held. He would have to transport them from facility to facility. So, like, very commonly, he'd have to drive from Germany to Italy and back, or vice versa, transporting prisoners. And but it's more like military prisoners, that is. But, like, wild offense type stuff that you don't think goes on in the military, people doing crazy shit on the dark web and stuff like that,
100%.
Just like the most wildest stuff. So I can just imagine even in a more civilian aspect, things probably get even crazier in some respects too. Like some of the things that you've had to see and deal with, and even thinking about transporting somebody to a sane asylum, to put it, in layman's terms, people don't think about that being a part of the job responsibilities.
It's being a part of being a police officer, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it is, and like so, I listened to that.
So, what's your other story you got for us?
Sorry, I'm on like a slight delay here. Yeah, no, I have a bunch of stories.
Just like a little audio delay.
Okay, I've got a bunch of stories. I'm just trying not to make them confusing, like time frame wise. So I'm like starting early and then building them up. But especially with transporting military prisoners is super weird, because even though they're calm and cool and collected, they've been trained to kill you. Like the benefit on my part is my crackheads might be crackheads, but their training is zero. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, taking somebody on a road they've never been on from Germany to Italy sounds like it could be rough stuff.
Right.
Could be. For sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. He would just tell me stories and these like daunting, undeveloped roads and things that he'd have to go on. Man, it was just like horror stories.
Yeah, that sounds.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah,
sure.
No way.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. I'm trying to think of jail stories. So like, the jail sucked to work in, but like we had. Like, the camaraderie is great. And, like, that's what people ask me, like, do you miss it? I'm like, yeah, the job was pretty cool. The schedule sucked. It was really, like, mentally and physically taxing. But the camaraderie is fantastic. I know that's kind of corny. Be like, my brothers. But, like, it really is. Like, I'm still in touch with a lot of these guys.
You hear it all the time, though.
Forever. And it's a true thing. And that made it that much more palatable to go through. Because going in and out of jail every day was terrible. It was terrible. And some of the inmates, the max guys,
I'm sure,
would be like, oh, I got to stay here, man. You get to go home. And I'm like, yeah, bro, but I got to come back in the morning. Like, you know what that's like? To wake up and come back and see you standing in your window staring at me again, like, nonstop. But,
right.
So
why are you in here again?
Yeah, right, yeah. Oh, and that's funny you say that. So... This was like not a wake up call, but an early like experience that I had with a guy I'm talking like the first couple of weeks that I was out of training, and this guy comes in for like something minor, like drugs or nothing life ruining. Like it's not great, but it's not going to ruin your life. You're going to be okay. Like you'll be fine. And he's in there, and this is in like the booking lounge. He's crying, and I have twin girls, and I'm ruining their life. I can't be there. I'm going to, I have to change. I'm going to change. I'm going to do this stuff. And I'm like, dang, bro, like, this is like a come to Jesus moment for you. So I was like talking to him. I was like, man, you can change, like whatever I said. And then literally I saw that guy got arrested every week for like 2 years. Like, he did not change. He kept doing it. He zero.
You didn't accept the message, but
no, he did, exactly. He did not change at all. And then I quit seeing him, probably because he's dead. But that was like an early experience of like, dang, some people are not able to help themselves or to get help. And we can talk about this too. I'm sure it'll come up with like, the system blows. The system blows. And it doesn't, like, when you're in it, you cannot, unless you've got a support system, you can't get out of it. Like, it's an impossible cycle.
Right.
And I get why it's in place. And there's something, like, it almost seems like it works too good for people that are, like, minor offenders, but then fails when somebody's, like, a hardcore, lifelong criminal. It's too many chances. Right. And, like, this might sound callous, but at some point, bro, you got to get out of the gene pool, so to speak. Not really kill them, but I'm tired of dealing. Like, your chances are exhausted. It's too much. But, There was a more of a point that I had. It escapes me now, but I remember. It's when I was in training, and this is just kind of this is just the brutally honest truth. And this guy's two events. One, a state trooper who was training us in DUI stuff said, "We're all cops for the same reason." And I was like, "Huh?" And he's like, "We're all here because we like to jack with people." And I was like, that's for sure not why I'm here, guy. And and the other one was a deputy at the sheriff's office said to me, he's like, I don't see most of these things as people. He said, they just look more like animals to me. They're just animals. And I was like, brother, what are you talking about? Now, here's the I remember that feeling. I was like, do I need to like report this? Because like that's not okay. Now I will tell you something right now.
Right.
Don't look at me differently, please. When I left, I didn't think like that on either account.
You understood that more.
But I was starting to see it. I was like, I got what they meant. He didn't mean jack with people as in like I like to make people have bad, like just mess stuff up. But you almost are living to like, ooh, a bad guy. Let me tie him up in the system the best that I can, so he can't do this anymore. And it's like that's kind of like not a perversion of justice, but like that's not what you're there to do. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. And it's it sucks.
Definitely.
It sucks. But so anyhow, what else you got?
Your time there in the police department too, you were there for 5 years, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm sure you probably saw some political changes, perhaps, whether it was top-down management type stuff. Can you talk perhaps about some of the political changes that you saw while you were working there?
Yeah, absolutely. So with sheriff is 4-year position, right? So every 4 years you get a new sheriff, or there's an election at least, and you might have the same one. So I had the same one the entire time I was there.
Sure.
Name of Frank Denning. I never met him. He did not swear me in. The undersheriff swore me in.
Oh, wow.
He does exist, from what I've heard. I've never laid eyes on him in person. Who knows if he's even alive? I don't know. It might be a Manchurian candidate or like Invasion of the Body Snatchers type situation. He is not around. He wasn't around.
The Wizard of Oz?
The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, thank you. That's way, way better. I don't know. I came up with Manchurian candidate, which does not fit at all, but whatever.
Not exactly the same thing.
Not the same thing at all. Anyhow, he good guy by all accounts, but I just never saw him, never met him. So that was like, out here, like I'm in Dent County. The sheriff is in a patrol car making traffic stops. Like he's a cop. Like he's out there. Our sheriffs and that at that size of agency, they're an elected person. They're a politician.
Yeah.
They're a figurehead. So, but you
it's
see
more
these,
political.
Yeah, it 100% is this political thing, and they're there more to like do budgets and stuff with the Board of County Commissioners than they are police work. But that's neither here nor there. But like political changes, it'll. I lost you a little bit there. Actually, I fully lost.
We're getting a bad connection here again.
I'm back. All right, I have audio at least. Anyhow, I'm gonna keep trucking. You have.
That's all right.
A political change would be like we have you operate by your SOP, okay, and it's the same with TSA. It's you operate with these standard procedures. That's how you do things, and it's if you operate under the umbrella, is what they called it, of policy, you're safe from whatever would get you outside of that umbrella. But when you deviate and you're no longer covered by this umbrella, you're on your own essentially. But the weird thing is with those policies. Man, I'm sorry about the weather, fellas. It's cutting out. The weird thing with the policies is it'll change with, like, undersheriffs, or they'll, like, add a position, like the undersheriff's bro is, like, the chief deputy all of a sudden, a position that never existed. And his pet peeve is officers wearing sunglasses on their heads when you get out of your car to make your traffic stop. So he does not, like, you would get written up for taking sunglasses and putting them up like this. And so, like, there's things like that that make zero sense. It's just, like, bizarre. And also kind of, like, if you have that much time on your hands, think of, like, maybe, like, officer retention, morale, community outreach, stuff like that, man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
Yeah, it's, like, crazy. The thing about sunglasses being that's my mark on the sheriff's office. I'm going to do that. But other than that, politically,
silly.
There wasn't too much. It was kind of, they were really good, honestly, about as long as you're doing your job correctly and you're not causing problems, that you're good to kind of keep going. So,
well, good. Sounds like they're more focused on the operations end and the practicality versus what's going on politically in the county or whatever the case is being forced down.
Yeah,
I know that can greatly affect police departments, though, especially in large cities.
Yeah, it absolutely it can. And then there's been many cases where that's like almost the downfall of the department, and you do have to watch out with weird things like that. And I never saw it at ours, but you got to watch out for like that can be the seed. Like if you make some policy that really makes everybody mad, it can be the seed for like 1 out of 100 guys might be like, oh man, that's the straw that broke the camel's back, and now they're gonna start being a dirtbag or whatever it is, because you hear stories about that, and like
Right.
you talked about that. We own this city, which is that it's a true story off the Baltimore,
Yeah, we own
Austin,
the
or whatever
city.
those cops.
Yeah. Baltimore Police Department.
Yeah. And they get this in their head where they get mad, and it's usually at the agency, traditionally is how it seems, and then they start like, man, this agency screwed
Right.
me over for the last time, and it starts off with, well, whatever, I'm going to say I work today, but I'm actually going to go home, whatever. Right. And they do that for a year, or, every
Right.
other week they take a day off or whatever it is. But then eventually it's, oh, hey, I'm going to run a money laundering operation, or we're going to go bust these guys without warrants and then take their money and not log anything and all that. So it can snowball pretty quick.
Yeah, right.
But we thankfully never,
Yeah,
I never
definitely.
dealt with things like that.
And I don't want to gloss over your police experience, but you did mention the fact that you were a TSA agent also, so I want to touch on that, and then eventually circle the conversation back around, talk about some more current ongoings with criminal justice
Yeah.
and reform and what have you.
Sure.
But you mentioned earlier you're a TSA agent. Can you tell us a little bit about what the job role was, anything that you can talk about there? Because
Yeah.
it's it's still under the criminal justice umbrella in many senses. Really, you're a federal agent.
Yeah, so you are, federal employee with the TSA, and it was one of those things that we when I moved back to this area, it's like, okay, one of the pros of being here is like all these stuff, be it have land, be close to family, all this stuff. The con is there's no good jobs out here. Like there's nothing. So we are,
Right.
We're close
Right.
enough to Fort Leonard Wood that there's some federal jobs, so that's great. And they had a posting for TSA,
Right.
so I applied, and they're like, "Oh, somebody with cop experience, snatch him up." I got hired pretty quick, and it was a pretty good experience. It went downhill there towards the end. My problem was scheduling. Like it was just non-negotiable. They're just so
Sure.
inflexible that I couldn't handle it anymore, so I had to leave. But it was great. You go,
Especially with a family, that changes the
oh
dynamics.
yeah. 100%, because it's like, I don't care. Like, with the sheriff's office, no kid. I was like,
Right.
I'll work that. Yeah, Sarge, I got that. I'll work that overtime. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'll stay late and fill other, whatever. But by the time I get to TSA, and it's like,
Right.
I got kids, like, I don't want to, no, I'm not going to come in on this day. Leave me alone. So, but it's good. And they're,
Right.
as an agency, they're pretty, it's a government agency, so a lot of red tape, right? But they have good training, and they send you off to FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. And it's this big, sprawling federal campus. And you've got Border Patrol. Ooh, speaking of Border Patrol, sorry, I'm, squirrel. Remind me to come back to Border Patrol, because I just saw a headline about this, and I don't know the truth behind this at all, and by the time this airs, so to speak, this may be debunked. I just read something that said the Supreme Court has passed some sort of bill, or was wrapped in a bill, or something, not passed a bill, that's not what they did. They upheld the decision that the Border Patrol, if you're within 100 miles of any border, they can warrantless entry your house to look for who they suspect to be there. Which I don't know if it's true.
Oh, wow.
But that, to me, sounds like a big problem. Big old problem for me.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
for
so
sure. Big time.
Absolutely.
big time
Big
problem. So
time.
we can.
That covers a lot of space.
Yes, it does. They said it covered what percentage? Because it's all of Chicago, Los Angeles, New York,
Right.
all these other cities.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's all of Florida would almost be covered.
Right.
Anyhow, I did.
Yeah.
I divulged, whatever the word is. Anyhow, so TSA, they
Digress.
train you up. You go there for,
You got it.
for
You
3
got it.
weeks.
Right.
You go for 3 weeks, and it's a live-in academy. 3 weeks is nothing in the scheme of things. So you're in there. They train you up. and you come back and you do 3 more weeks at a big airport. So for me, it was Springfield. Go down there for 3 weeks. They kind of show you the ropes, and you come back to your home airport, which for me was TBN, which is Forney Army Field. So it's kind of weird because it's a civilian airport on a military base. And Fort Wood's an Army training base, but they also train Marines. The Navy and the Air Force come through, and I've even seen the Coast Guard, which I don't know what they're doing there. Probably something to do with chemical weapons. They have a chemical depot there or whatever. And come through, do that. I did that for a year, and then I'm like, hey, I can do more than this. And I put in and get a lead officer position, which kind of is just you are the whipping boy of the airport. You got to do all this stuff, and you don't get paid that much more for it. So it works out good.
So I think whenever people hear the word or the phrase TSA, the image that comes to mind is the things that they see on the news or they've experienced themselves, and that's going through the line, getting checked, and that sort of thing. But I'm sure there's a lot more to the job than that. Is there any bit of the job aspect, responsibilities that you can elaborate on so people get a better understanding what is involved in a TSA agent's day to day?
Yeah, for sure. So, you come in and you do, and the training is ongoing. So I think it's the same it was same for police work and same for military people, but it's nonstop training. You got to go take these tests. You got to do that. But something that people don't know about TSA is that it actually, for me, before I went there, I was like, oh, bro, I'm going to be the water bottle sheriff. Well, you can't take that water, sir. I'm going to stop this. And I did do that.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to really, get in trouble now. But, there is so much that goes on, and I honestly wonder if it's not, intentionally downplayed. Because I'll get, news stories, and they're gun found at JFK. And it's they find guns every single day in St. Louis. There's somebody trying to take a gun through that checkpoint every single day. Constant. And 99.9% of them are old women who forgot that they're in their purse, or some guy who thought he could do it. And I had a guy in Springfield come through, and he had a taser, which is prohibited. You can't take it. 3 knives, pepper spray, a knife cane, and he's just like, "What's up? I thought, what's the problem? I didn't. What do you mean? I didn't.
Everything's above board here."
Yeah, exactly. This is totally cool. And it's and it's a $10,000 fine if you bring a gun to the checkpoint. It's not a joke.
Right.
It's for real. And a lot of times, if you're cool and you show up and they say, "Hey, we need to look at your bag," and the guy's he's clutching his head. He's like, "Oh my God, I left my gun in there. I'm so sorry." And if they do that, the cops take the gun and make it safe, and then they'll walk you to the front door of the airport and hand it back to you and be like, "Put it in your car," and that's it. You don't go to jail. You don't get the fine. But the people that make a stink. Right. Or I had a lady one time had a gun in her purse, and just without giving away government secrets, you're never getting a gun. I mean, I won't say never because it has happened, but the X-ray they're very effective, and it's very, 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 very difficult to get anything like that through. And but we had a lady with a gun in her purse, and so we're talking to her, and then it's in the back of the queue. So there's hundreds of people in line in Springfield, right? And the back of the queue, you could hear her husband saying, "She's got TSA pre-check. It's okay." And it's dude, that's not how that works. You does not mean you can just start taking guns to the checkpoint, man. But yeah, so that's good. I'm trying to think of some quick stories of TSA. Had a lady one time, her bag had to get checked for various reasons, and I open it up, and there's some questions you ask them, "Hey, is this your bag? Anything fragile I should be aware of? I need to go through this real quick, just take a second," stuff like that. So I open it up, right, whoop, and it's just nothing but loose cash. Just, I don't know how much money, just loose cash. And I'm and so I'm going like this, and I'm hey, because the first thing they're going to say is, "Hey, you took my money," and I'm "Hey, supervisor, come over here." And then you're domestically, you can fly with any amount of money. If you're international, it's $10,000. She was going to Chicago one way with a literal suitcase of loose money. And they were like, "Where are you going?" She's like, "Chicago."
That doesn't seem suspicious.
Right. And they're like, "Why?" She's like, "I'm going to buy a minivan." And I'm like, must be a pretty sick minivan if they're going to take your suitcase full of cash.
Right.
Yeah.
And anyhow, and I don't know, I think the cops talked to her, but she ended up flying. But then, so another thing, and I was going to talk about with TSA is like, it's super annoying. People will always be like, abolish the TSA, abolish them. And it's so stupid, it's security theater. And like, to a degree, it is security theater, but it's only had a positive effect. Because I can tell you, there 100% are people out there who are constantly probing these airports, constantly trying to get things through, trying to
figure
what
out a
makes
weakness.
it. Oh yeah, like I'm talking nonstop, and they don't put it in the news for some reason, but there's people getting put on like the terrorist watch lists and no-fly lists. Oh, that's done way above us, but like all the time. Because they literally are, and there's one in Springfield recently, within 5 years, where they had a guy who had some things in his bag, and they thought it was a bomb based off the X-ray images. And so they called the police, they get it, it's not a bomb, but it's clearly been assembled to resemble a bomb. Like, it looks like a bomb. So they get this kid he's graduated from college, and he's going home to somewhere in Africa, and they're like, why is this in your bag? He's like, I don't know. They're like, who packed your bag? And he's, I don't know. What's in your bag? I don't know. Like, just said, I don't know for every single question. And so they keep the bag. Yeah. He gets on his plane, and he gets additional screening, but he leaves. Like, he gets to go. But that guy's he can never come back to the country. So, but like, there's stuff like that. So essentially, with a situation like that, is what it is somebody's reached out to him, either known to him or not, and said, hey, we're going to pay you $10,000 to try to take XYZ in this configuration through that airport. And they'll be like, you won't get arrested because nothing you have is illegal. And you need to tell us if you make it through that airport or if they stop you. So I'm sure as soon as he landed in his home country, he tells them, hey, they stopped me. So whoever it is in whatever country, they mark off on a list, okay, can't sneak XYZ through. And they go on to the next thing at some other airport somewhere else.
Right.
And it's a very much needed service. Like it's scary. And like even at
I would also assume that the TSA deals a lot with narcotics. How much narcotics did you deal with? I figured that would be probably one of the biggest issues. Oh, did I already?
No. So we are our prime.
Probably see reports of this online.
Right. So there is the primo exam. Now there are cases. The only time that narcotics are going to be involved, for the most part, is if that something comes up on the X-ray that they think it's something else, and they look at it and they suspect drug activity. So, like weird, like big loose packages of pills, or white powdery substance inside a teddy bear. That's not normal. And then the cops are involved, right? So, and then at that point, the police take it over, and that's where these drugs come from. TSA is 100% there to keep airplanes in the sky. That's what it's all about. Totally.
I got you.
And I'll
keep the people moving.
Not a lot of keep the people moving.
The
make sure they're safe. The cops take the criminal stuff. The feds will handle any like actual bomb stuff, and then drugs, unless you suspect it. It just like because I don't know, like because we didn't get in trouble once, but there was a guy had like a pipe. Right, like a weed pipe, like a one hitter, and I was in charge of the checkpoint.
I am familiar.
I've heard of those.
Experts on the
I heard about it. They so it's like it's one hitter, and I see it. It's there in the guy's bag. The officer doing the bag checks, like, hey, what about this? And I said, let it go. Like I don't care. Like that's not going to blow up. He can't kill somebody with it. It's fine. So anyhow, it comes out that I let it go. And they're like, well, why didn't you hang on to it? I'm like, I would like, how many hours of training did TSA provide me in recognizing drugs? They're like, none. And I'm like, cool, goodbye. Like, get out of my face with your nonsense. I don't want to talk to you anymore. So unless it's blatantly obvious. Unless it's blatantly obvious, like I'm not gonna. Unless there's like a threat to the plane, we're not holding anybody on that checkpoint for anything. If they got a knife, if they got a gun, they're not gonna. We're say, hey, you can't go through. If they take off running, I'm not gonna terminate a run after them. The cops are gonna stop them. And if they've got a pipe, Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
Violate their rights and say you can't leave? Nah, I'm not a police officer as TSA. I can't arrest them. I can tell them to stop, but I'm not. Like, it's basically security at that point.
Right.
You know? So to answer your question, yeah, drugs are not really on the radar,
Right.
unless it's somehow stumbled
Right.
upon.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there's been
during the discovery process of other things. That is.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if you find it during something else, if it's in the scope of your search, because there's been cases where they were looking, the item they're looking for is in, let's say it's in pocket A. It's on top of the bag. Well, at the very bottom of the bag, they've got a fat bag of weed. Well, guess what? You weren't supposed to be looking at that bottom portion of that bag at that point. So if they stop you, basically you had no reason to look at it. You had no reason to call the cops over. Therefore, like, the cops search, or if they're it's all voided, and so it's like there's no point in dealing with it. So anyhow.
Right.
But,
Well, TSAs, the jobs, the responsibility, all that stuff dramatically changed, of course, after 9/11. I don't know if they gave you a history lesson at all during your TSA training with that. I mean, the TSA, it was a thing, but it was relatively non-existent compared to
Not
what
to
it
the
is today.
to the degree it is nowadays. Right.
So, history lesson. I was gonna say what's 9/11 is what I should have said, but I didn't.
Yeah, what is that?
What is, I never heard of that. So with 9/11,
what is this thing you call history?
Exactly. That's right. I'm just here to chew gum. Yeah. 9/11 kicks off, right? And so then it's 2 months later in November, I don't remember, 9th possibly. November, they do the Transportation Security Act, which is basically, it federalizes all airport security. It makes, there's a few things that get placed. Like, everybody gets screened. It's 100% of all checked baggage gets screened. Because, this is crazy to think about now. Like, obviously, your checked bag's getting put through a machine to look at, right? Back in the day, they were just like, under the plane, no one's going to be crazy enough to do something under there. And they're just like, and they're throwing them under there. And it's like, what is happening? Yeah. So it pops off. And then there's a few other big changes. So it's like in 2000, I think, is it 3, 6, 1? No, it was the same year. Sorry, same year. It's 1 month after that happens, you get this Richard Reed cat. So TSA has stood up all over the country. They hire all these people. And they're like, the problem they thought was that the airports were inconsistent with security screening. So terrorists could go to airport A and watch and be like, okay, these guys are really searching well. We don't want to go here. They can go to airport B and be like, that's pretty good. At airport C, they're running short-staffed and they're really flying through the process. They're like, this is how we're getting through. And so they wanted this big standardized thing. So that's why they did it. And it's very standardized. It should be the same every airport you go to. All the same rules are being followed.
Absolutely.
100% of the time, every time. So then a month later, after it gets stood up, Richard Reed, it's the shoe bomber. You know who I'm talking about when I say that? You remember that guy? He has his shoe, and he goes, and he has his laces are the fuse. His laces are he's going to light his laces on fire, and the sole of his shoe has been hollowed out with some sort of explosive, I don't know. And so what he does is he puts his foot up on the window of the plane and starts flicking this lighter. Well, everybody, this is 2 months or whatever after 9/11, so everybody is super super stoked or whatever, and they're like, I'm not gonna crash,
stressed
bro.
and scared.
I'm not gonna crash. So this guy put his foot on the window and starts trying to light it. And the guy next to him in the seat is like, yo, this guy's trying to light his shoe on fire. And they just jumped him and, I believe, smashed his face in. Essentially is what happened. Unrecognizable. And I guess the only reason...
I think I've seen booking photos.
Right, he was jacked up. And the only reason they didn't light, they said, is because he had the shoes on for 7 days. And they were all nasty and gross, I guess, the fuse was. Same with the underwear bomber guy. Which is when they came out with the stand-up machines, because they never thought that somebody would do that. They did. Same thing as whoever the bomb maker was told him, do not take this off no matter what.
Right.
And that guy was an idiot, because obviously he's going to go blow himself up on an airplane. He's not. And it didn't detonate because he peed his pants, apparently multiple times. because the guy told him don't take it off. So what he meant was like, don't mess with it and don't put it back on. He didn't mean pee your pants over and over, you idiot. So the guy peed his pants and it ruined the explosives. Yeah, he couldn't blow it up because he tried also and didn't. Yeah, and then that guy was a goof. What a goof. And then there was the liquids one. That's
there was a whole string of actors.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, a whole string of people always trying stuff. Too. And then the liquid
whole string
one.
Of actors right after that.
Yeah, they all try to do it, and the liquid. They and I don't know how they get the sizes, but the plan was to mix like a large quantity, like big old, Pantene Pro V bottle with liquid explosives, and they're gonna have multiple bottles that they then mix together and then detonate. And then they figured that this small amount would make it very unlikely that they could do it, and then that's been the last real big one. So, but that's
well, it kind of all goes back into risk management in the sense that I'm sure that there's people out there, whether they're involving scientists in this process, that they should be. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But, people should be able to know, biochemists, whatever the situation is, like this amount of this, and the likelihood that you could carry that in this compartment of this luggage bag, so on and so forth. So really, there's probably stats out there that they can really tie those decisions to. But I say that as if we have inept or people that aren't inept running our country and agencies, and we know that that's the opposite in many cases. Like what's going on right now while we're recording is the January 6th insurrection hearings that they're having primetime television with.
Yeah,
so I'm
prime sure time, baby.
A lot of shit shows going to come out of that.
That's going to be crazy. Yeah, that'll be crazy. And you're right. There's a lot of idiots up there. For the most part, my experience-wise, there's a lot of red tape with TSA, and God forbid you try to change any, not procedure-wise, but if you try to hey, we could make this could happen and everything would be better. They're like, no, this is the only way to do it. And it's like, okay, guys,
this is the way, right?
Yeah, this is the way, but annoying and not cool, like Mando. Yeah. So it's just dang, man. It's kind of a bummer, but it is, and it genuinely is an important, it really an important job for the most part. Not to be I'm important, but it's if it wasn't there, 100% there would have been something else would have happened for sure.
Especially in today's crazy world.
Yeah, it's getting nuts.
I remember hearing stories about TSA and people getting, it just kind of I guess they kind of get the rap of glorified mall security cop, those type of statements that are thrown around or whatever. But I personally never really had a problem with them. I never flew that much either. But you gotta think, if you want to avoid a situation like 9/11, you need some type of standard operating procedure with a federalized or systemized, platform that's the same across the board. There's some consistency that's being laid out in the review process, and people know what to do in situations. And really, this clearly has avoided many, other national catastrophes.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of silly to have beef with it. I understand people have, there's people that travel for a living, for example. I'm sure they have a lot of idiosyncrasies and issues with TSA or whatever, and they would be more of an expert to comment on that. But my limited experience traveling and flying, I mean, could it go quicker? Sure, but I mean, why take it out on the TSA too? That's just somebody trying to do their job and trying to keep everybody safe too.
Everybody almost was act like everything's an inconvenience, and they don't even realize how important it really is. You know what I mean? So
for sure.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of that, and I'm sure. Yeah, if I had to fly every day, it would be annoying, and you really would notice an inconsistency if one person tells you to take this out. And then one person takes you to take that out, and then you're like, but this guy told me that. And I used to hear that all the time. But usually it's people who are they're trying to take their full-size whatever bottle of wine. And I'm like, hey, it's too large. You have to take it to your vehicle or put it in check baggage or whatever. And they're like, well, they let me take it through Dallas. And I'm like, well, guess what? You're not in Dallas, brother. So take it out.
Dallas.
So a lot of that. But I never said it to him like that. Yeah, right, yeah. So I never said it to him like that. I was close about it. And I say bottle of wine because I actually have leftover guilt, because there's Fort Wood used to be the home of one of the military police battalions or whatever, and they had its birthday, and they had a World War II vet who was in that back in World War II, And he was there as like the guest of honor and all this stuff, and he's flying out like in a wheelchair, and so I'm like, he has to have a pat down, so I'm doing his pat down. Well, in his bag, he's got this bottle of wine from the military police, and it's like it's like labeled like to so and so for X number of years of service, and I'm like, throw it in the trash. So I felt so bad. And the old guy was, I know. I felt like the bad guy. Oh, no.
Oh, man.
And I was like, hey, I am so sorry. I was like, do you have a check bag? No. Do you want to go out and drink it? We're not supposed to tell people to go drink stuff. But, do whatever you can. I can't, though, in good conscience, let it go
trying
through.
to be as reasonable as you could.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I tried everything. I was like, I offered to mail it. I said, hey, out of my own I will pack this up and mail it to you. And he was, he's 100 years old. He's like, no, it's fine. I don't care. I was like, okay, whatever. So I threw it in the trash. I felt terrible.
He's like, I've been through enough shit. Fuck this.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, World War II, I don't care about some guy in a blue shirt taking my wine. I got more wine at home. I killed a lot of Germans. It's fine. He was very cool. But then, there's other people out there that are like, you're like, hey, you can't have a gallon-sized jug of whatever, and they freak out, and it's just like, man, it's not worth it. It's too much effort. But another thing,
it's common sense though, too. You think, you know what I mean?
You would think.
You would hope. Yeah, you would hope. But and it's all like on the website. You can Google it in 30 seconds and know everything you need to know. Get through it like that.
Exactly right.
But
100%.
With TSA, and they don't advertise this really, I don't think, and I feel like they should, but the testing is nonstop. You only ever hear about it like, it was like, TSA failed to find this, or whatever. But essentially is what it is they have, like, professional actors that are hired to hide stuff and try to get through that security checkpoint. And some of them is, like, lower scale that are a lot easier. Some of them are, like, timed with, like, 3 or 4 different people trying to do something at once, and they're like, they will not break their story. They won't stop until the cops come. They'll get arrested. They'll do all that stuff, and it's all to test to see if you're doing what you're supposed to do or not. And like they'll have, I'm talking,
that's pretty wild.
People with fake pregnancies coming through saying that they can't have whatever, you can't touch their stomach, you can't do this, you can't do that, or people coming, with casts and slings and prosthetic legs that they have fake bombs hidden in, and like if you don't catch it, they're like, boom, they take all those stats and they retrain people and try to figure it out. And I'm talking like every single day in St. Louis specifically, a big airport, they're going, like for us it was like weekly or whatever, but they come through and they're just running it and running it and running it. And I've got a good story about that, which is with
you don't
the fake
think about
pregnancy.
it, but it makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It makes perfect sense. And that's how honestly, one thing I agreed with was that continuous training, so you don't get lulled into this false sense of like, no one ever has anything, you click, 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 click. Nah, there's constantly something coming through that should not be there. And it was with a fake pregnancy, but I guess the lady went into the bathroom. We don't see him. And she's like adjusting her fake pregnancy stomach because she has like a gun underneath it. And another lady comes out of the bathroom stall and sees her like tucking her stomach into her shirt, like the fake stomach. And so she sees it and is like, what's going on right now? So she goes up to the front counter and tells the airline, she's like, hey, I think something's going on. This lady's got a fake stomach. And the airline manager, only the manager, is told before the test so they know to like not freak out, basically. And so the manager tells her,
overlook something
she's like,
that.
oh, I'm sure it's fine. She knows she knows what's going on. She's like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. Don't worry about it. And then this lady's like freaking out in the lobby and it's like shaking and crying. And it's like, I don't know what to do. And she grabs one of us. It's like, that lady, there's something going on. She's got something in her shirt. And anyway, and she like basically broke the whole, like, they had to stop the test. But like, we were all very thankful to her to be like, that's exactly what you should do. So anybody out there, if you see something weird in the bathroom or somebody's tucking their fake stomach in, or they're like packing their shoes with stuff,
tell somebody.
Tell somebody. It's only a good thing. But I was very proud of her for not just being like, oh, everything's fine. Nah, man, she knew something was up, and she came straight to us and was like, hey, something's wrong. And
that's cool.
So it was.
That situation reminds me of something that I've had a lot of conversations with people about here recently too. It's with cell phones nowadays, everything's recorded.
Yeah.
In the nick of a moment. It can be very important. It can be not important, but people record stuff. They put it online, put it on their social media. It can be anywhere and everywhere. It can be viral. Fortunately, what was caught with George Floyd, for example, was caught on camera, which really helped with that whole trial and proceeding and everything. But, to that point, though, is often this lady's to be commended in this situation is where I'm ultimately getting. But, nowadays it's common. People just pull out a phone and just start recording, maybe not even say anything.
Right.
That's kind of the bad part of it.
Right. They just want to get TikTok views.
Yeah. They just want to get some views. They want to get their stuff on CNN or whatever the case is, versus actually taking action, going and talking to a person of authority to get something handled or addressed.
Right.
The adult thing is what I like to call it. But, a lot of people have recessed into that. Well, I've got to record it on my phone. Otherwise it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. So especially with the George Floyd thing, like sadly was instrumental, because if that video wouldn't have been there, it might have not panned out the way that it did. Like, you got to have these videos. And so that's, I can come back to it a little bit, but people usually get real mad about traffic stops and somebody recording the traffic stop. It's like, why do you care? The car is recording. My chest is recording. That's Axon Flux, or Axon Flux 2. The Axon Flux, I think it's head mounted. So it's literally a thing right here. So where you look, for the most part, is where it looks.
It's point of view, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it wouldn't be good, because if it's slightly angled down and you lean in to talk to somebody, it's aiming at their chest, but you got to be very cognizant of what that camera's picking up, because it's going to look like you're looking at somebody's, boobs. But you just got to make sure your camera's aiming in the right place before you look down there. And you go up to the window, and I've had many, many times where you make a traffic stop, and you go up, and we had you identify yourself and why you're stopping them, and calm, cool, collected, courteous the whole time, regardless of what they're doing. And I never had a problem with that. And sometimes you go up, and the person's got their window only down this much, and they've got a piece of paper pressed up against the window that says, I will not answer any questions, I will not do this, I will not do that. Okay, that's fine. The only thing you're supposed to do is give me your driver's license, proof of insurance, and your registration. And I wouldn't even ask for registration half the time. Insurance and driver's license, please. They'd slide through that crack.
Yeah, people don't
I wouldn't even say anything about the thing that had the glass. I don't know, it doesn't matter to me. That's fine. It doesn't. If you don't want to answer my questions, I'm not going to quite. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. If I smell the smell of alcohol coming out of your vehicle, we go down a different road then, where you're going to have to get out or whatever. But if it's just a regular old traffic stop and they don't want to talk to me, I have no offense taken on my part. Or I'll have people, you come up and they're like, I'm recording, and it makes you think. One, are they just annoying idiots? And they think they're being funny, or they think they can get a rise out of you, or have they had a bad law enforcement experience? Were they treated badly by some officer somewhere else? Are they scared that something bad's about to happen? I've had lots of people, they go and they're shaking so bad they can't get their ID out. And it's there's a couple ways you can look at that. Is it they just murdered their wife and they think they're about to get caught? Or did their cousin get shot by the cops last week? You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of, and you don't know any of it. You just got to kind of play it by ear, which can be scary, but it is what it is. Right. But with the whole videoing thing, it's it's the most important. And as long as you're not interfering with that stop or with the police work, I've seen you've seen them too. The videos where the person's across the street with their camera, they're across the damn street. They are not in the way. And hothead cop number one, hey, you can't do that. What? Yes, you can. Pull out a second phone and record that one too.
You're on a public road, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So don't block traffic. Don't you see people? They'll try to get between the cop and the person they're arresting with their camera and be like, "I'm just recording. You can't stop me because it's my right to report." It's well, now there's a new situation.
Now you're impeding, right?
Exactly. So it's anyhow. But so what about? Do you guys want to know about what the George? You want to know about my opinions on the George Floyd thing?
Well,
or Ferguson or any of that? I got
get
lots of
into
hot
that
takes
at some point, but what I really want to kind of start with is I think a lot of the results of these things can be led back to what people assume is taking place as over policing in particular. Mm-hmm. And you hear over policing used in political debates all the time. You hear it as part of political agendas. So people, just at a topical level, I'm going to define what over policing is, and it's just essentially the idea is that the police force is out in large in the sense that they're making a high number of arrests, with the thought that they are taking criminals off the street and they're actually catching people in criminal acts. And even if they aren't, they're reducing the number of the possibilities of criminal acts. So that's really just kind of the simplistic way to put it. And I know it kind of sounds nefarious probably to some already, and I'm not really trying to make it sound that way. There's literally political agendas that take place. Let's say a mayor takes over a city, and they want to be able to tout that they've done all this stuff for crime, for example. Mm-hmm. And so the mayor hooks up with the police chief, and this is an easy example to use. So in large cities, and if anybody's seen the show that's out recently, we alluded to earlier, We Own This City. That's about a more recent event that took place, but in Baltimore in particular, essentially the political agenda was that they have a high crime rate. So what they turned around and did is the mayor encouraged the police force, the police commissioner, to go to all of the street officers and make arrests. And they were like literally just like people that were just hanging out on the stoops of their property. They were making people go inside their house. If they confronted an officer, if they were defiant against officers, they would forcibly put people inside of their homes, and in the event that they got any gruff with that, police assaults would break out. Just really ridiculous things would break out. And I know that's just a niche example, and again, this is a bit of a Hollywood take, but it's if you don't understand what over-policing is, it is a good example of seeing it in action, and it really does explain.
One example that really comes to mind too was the Boston Marathon bombings, when they were looking for the suspects on that, how they locked down subdivisions and were telling people they couldn't leave their house and they had to go in their house, and they were searching house by house, which I understand that's a different circumstance because it's obviously a terror suspect, but going on to that level, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So over policing, we've kind of at least created an example or provided something for somebody to look at. But I don't know if you ever witnessed over policing in your time as an officer in and of itself. I know, earlier I asked about kind of the political things, but this kind of ties into that too. Was there any mandates that you ever saw in your experience that was like, hey, we need to make some more arrests? It's end of month. We need to meet quotas. Like, you hear people say that all the time on the street.
Speeding quotas. That's the big one.
Right. Not enough speeding tickets. So end of month, you're going to get slammed with 10 tickets. Yeah.
So now, as I think I said this before we were recording, and I said I'm super look, I'm super pro police. I got my shaved head still because I'm balding, not because I'm a Nazi or whatever. But it's one of the I genuinely
we need to make that clear.
I know. Yeah, I got to. Yeah. I got a story about that too. It's a good one. I never ever heard of or saw any sort of quotas or anything. The only thing that I can remotely say was they call it directed, is during click it or ticket, where you're specifically looking for seatbelt violations, or you're doing DUI saturation patrol. So it's like a Friday, Saturday night, they have extra officers out just looking for DUIs, and that's just to keep people from dying, because that's a bad deal, is getting head-on collision, But but the thing is, just because I didn't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now, one reason could be the county, let's say I make, I got 500 whatever speeding tickets given out for whatever, the month or year or whatever. The county, they get that revenue. The sheriff's office doesn't get it. It goes the roads department or whoever gets it. That's where that goes. With cities, I think it goes to the department. So there is small towns that their budget is this big, and they need body cameras, and they're like, hey, we got to get more stops in here. And it's not going to be hey, go write 10 tickets, but it's going to be hey, enforce it. So
did we have a situation like that in Ludington where they were over issuing speeding tickets for ridiculous reasons, where almost a lot of the cases were getting thrown out and stuff? And then there for a while, I never even seen a Ludington officer on the highway anymore, because when I first started driving, that was where you got a speeding ticket around here, was in Ludington. Yeah. I mean, they were pulling people over for 63s and 60s and stuff like that. Right. So that's where I kind of always heard that quota thing with Ludington, you know what I mean?
Right. And that could very be it.
Cash flow.
Right, it really could be how they're doing it. For us, I never saw it. State troopers, like, one, no one likes state troopers because, you know, I mean, come on, they're just out there like what?
Sure.
Only doing traffic stops. They don't have calls for service, or like they don't investigate anything. Goodbye.
Right.
Anyway, but like they don't care about revenue.
For sure.
County doesn't care about revenue. Cities can matter. The revenue can matter, and that stuff has happened all over the country. That's why these stories exist, and it can be a real problem. And like we can talk about the same with like over policing. You go and like you over police an area, and depending on like, yeah, you might be arresting the right, like, yeah, they're criminals, but like you also are like every person that's got a kid and you arrest their dad, and now they don't like you, and guess what? You just did it to a bunch of them. So now it's like a whole generation of people that hate you. It's like, dang, can't win for trying on that
affects the
front.
community, right?
It does. So there's been a lot of programs, and it might be too little too late, but there's been a lot of programs that are like, they do the resident officer programs where they go out and they have a cop that goes and he lives with his family in the neighborhood that he polices. And versus trying to arrest as many people as you can, you try to root out the actual problems. So not just, suspects 1, 2, 3 are buying drugs. Yeah, well, whoopity do. Who is it? But suspect 4 is selling drugs and then human trafficking. So he can go, the other guys can stay. So.
Yeah.
There's other problems, though, that get in with that, and so I don't want it all to be one-sided, like we're going to slam the police or whatever, but
no,
this is going on in St. Louis right now. In fact, before we started the interview today, I sent Josh a video. In St. Louis specifically, the mayor has done several different interviews, particularly with USA Today in the last year, talking about the staffing of the police department in St. Louis in and of itself, and how they're so short staffed that the actual head of police there wants to do exactly what you talked about, but the police officers, they don't have the ability to go and get to know their constituents and just do, neighborhood visits and build a rapport with those people and, build relationships with people in the community. Like, they're so understaffed. And then that being met with, budget cuts, so they've cut back to uniform officers as well. So that kind of gets into the defund the police talk and those movements too. So like, people don't realize whenever you make a statement like that and then try to employ it, what it actually does to a community. Like, I think there's a paradox that presents itself. It's yes, you can over police, but also you can under police.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. You're bringing up that's the real topic right there, because there for a second there, policing, like it's one step forward, 500 steps back because some idiot somewhere does something bad, or a whole group of idiots. They're everywhere. There's idiots all over the place, and it's depending on what level of stupidity they operate on that day, defund the police, man. I'm not gonna. That is the worst idea that I have ever heard in my, like, you can look at the statistics for the cities that tried to implement it, and it's like crime is just skyrocketing. It's skyrocketing. Now, this is a slight deviation. If you want to lower crime, you can decriminalize marijuana. Do it, and it's going to lower crime because it's no longer crime. The amount of money that you save from not prosecuting those cases and not having officers do it, for not even storing the evidence in the evidence room, you then have more officers on the street looking at really important things, right? So, but with people...
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know there's people that came around, because Defund the Police starts, right? And then a little bit, that's everyone's really hot, and they're really worked up, and rightfully so. And they're like, what do we even have these people for if they're going to kneel on our necks in the street and kill us? Right? Like, why am I around if that's the outcome?
Right.
Like, what's the purpose? I totally, I get that.
Right.
As not a knee-jerk, but as like a kind of like, dang, what's the point? But then you've got these agencies that, are trying to do these things and trying to, like, even guys trying to do the right thing. If they don't have money, they're not going to be able to do anything at all, and it's only going to get worse. And then they came out and said, well, we don't mean defund, we mean reallocate these expenses. So the cops, instead of having this huge budget for whatever, they can take $20,000 and put it into a new park for this neighborhood that has all these problems. And, like, I'm down I'm down for stuff like that. I think that's fine.
Well,
That's all fine and dandy, but I think another one of the points that was made with all of that too, and this is something that I do agree with, is whenever you're getting into civil disputes where things criminally are not actually going on, which officers get called to all the time. And I can attest to it myself, having been a property manager and working in hospitality. I had to call the cops many times, which really were civil things, and I knew that other than, telling them I was kicking this person off of our private property and that I was going to, enforce trespassing charges against them as a business owner. That was really my only part of a criminality type thing going on versus, more of a civil thing that was actually taking place, what probably initiated things to begin with as it was. So, but anywho, I just use that as an example, but really to get back into the defund the police aspect, that some of these arguments were being made was that we want to invest in like caseworkers to be staffed on the police.
Casework.
To intervene
People
or
work.
go with on these situations, or people that are more equipped for suicide and hostage situations, psychology degrees.
And I
or
don't speak
studies.
I don't speak for the whole left or anybody that is for or proponent of defunding the police, but I also think a big thing of defunding the police is demilitarizing the police too. I think we're getting to a state in a modern time where there's bigger departments, let's say like New York City, who are getting MRAPs and, unrealistic amounts of body armor and, you know what I mean? Just like, and absolutely, like, I don't think that we should militarize the police. And I think that's another big argument of the defund the police thing. Also, don't you agree?
Yeah, to some extent. I know that those are comments that are made. I think a lot of that goes into aesthetics, though.
Right.
People like that gets also reported on heavily too. So, like, I don't think that's ambiguous like an umbrella to all police forces. Like, I don't think that's necessarily going on. That's a little bit more niche, with everybody.
Right.
But certainly officers, school teachers. I'll make this comment about them too. The most underpaid, undertrained,
Right. Absolutely.
understaffed people in this entire
and
country.
that's one of the root of the
regardless
issues.
of your political allegiances, you can at least agree with that. Like, if anybody knew what a starting cop salary was, especially in a small town or area like this or where you're at currently, I mean, people would just be like, why are you doing this job?
Right.
Yeah.
There's no question. No question. It's not for debate. It's a fact.
Right.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the militarizing the police thing is this. It's almost a paradox, because it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, have a long gun and a helmet, and like that's how you're gonna reach the hearts and the minds of the people, like looking like you repelled out of a helicopter? No, of course not, right? And that's not what's needed. And it's what.
Right.
But the thing is, there's a time and a place that has to exist, and you have to be able to meet whatever the worst thing the bad guys got. You have to be able to essentially one up them and survive.
I agree with that.
Survive long enough.
Uvalde, Texas, perfect example.
That's what I'm saying. And like, this is where my unending police support kind of wavers, right? So I went through active shooter training, and they're like, when you go in, you're gonna get shot. You're gonna see dead kids, and they're gonna scream at you to please help me. And you're going to have to step on them to go find the shooter and go kill him. That's all you have to do. They're like, you're going to see that guy in the hall. He's either going to shoot you, he's going to shoot a kid right in front of you, or he's going to kill himself. And that's what you hope, is as you push, the guy kills himself. And I'm a big, like, I like to see body cam footage. Like, I'm going to wait and see that footage when it comes out before I pass any too harsh a judgment. But is what it sounds like is two guys followed him in, and he got to that door too quick, and he shut it behind him, and he locks it. They go to the door, he shoots two of them through the door, they pull back. You can't get into that door without a team. Like, you can't, if you stand there and kick it, he's going to shoot you.
Right.
You can't, like,
right.
I mean, you can't, I don't want to blame those first two guys that didn't shoot him. Or there was murmurs that somebody contacted him in the school, security or something contacted him and let him get in there. And I hate to blame them, but it's like, once that door shuts, it's a fatal funnel is what it's called. It's, you have this little thing to go through, but it's closed, and you can't get through. You have no shield, no anything. Hindsight is 20/20, right? And is what I'm sure every guy that was there who did go is, you know, the ones that don't shoot themselves or start a shotgun later on this year, which there's going to be a couple of them for sure. They're going to lay there at night like this, and think is what you would hope to do is go get a shield. Somebody's got a shield. Some police department had a shield. Go get it and hold it up against that door, and then somebody else kick it until it opens up, and you go kill that guy. You have to. That's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
So, and I know that they were saying that it was an off-duty. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead and finish your point.
Okay, they were saying that it was originally it was like off-duty border patrol killed him. It was all off-duty guy. He went and did it. The cops were too scared to go. Oh, it was the border patrol.
Like borrowed a gun from his barber or something crazy.
Yeah, it was the border patrol TAC team killed him with full body armor, helmets, and a shield.
Yes.
That there was an off-duty guy that went with a barber with a shotgun and got his own kid and his wife out, which is what I mean, and other people. I think I'm not saying he's a thing for himself, because when that story was still coming out, they were like, the cops got only their own kids out. There's those cowards only got their own children. Like, nah. The one guy went and got his kid. He was off duty, and he helped other people. And it's just this horrible situation. Right. Like, what's the point of being, if you have military equipment or whatever, like, to not be able to go and do it? And like, they told us point blank to our faces, you're gonna, if there's an active shooter and you get into that school, you run. Like, you don't, there's no cover. There's no peeking corners. You Terminator sprint at that guy and shoot him in the face. And we trained it over and over. We got role players. There's dead bodies laying all over the place. There's people running. We did a bunch of different scenarios over and over and over where he's barricaded in there. And you go in and he's got a hostage. You got to shoot him. And they're like, guess what? And they're like, this is going to sound terrible. You might hit that hostage. That might be what that's going to happen. You have a pistol. That guy's got a rifle. What are you going to do? Like, let everybody die, and you're going to die, and your friends are going to die, or that kid or whoever's going to get hit and hopefully live, and that guy's going to die. So it's just this terrible situation that just is horrific and like a nightmare. And like they're talking about people can only
and
identify
I don't care how much training you have.
Shoes. Yeah, no, exactly. You can't really be ready. And then people are like, oh, the cops, they don't need this equipment. And it's, well, if they're not going to do anything, they don't need it. That's for sure. If they're not going to step up, and you're not going to, like, whatever, get some guy or get a table and ram that door open and go get them. Or, like, I do get, they chase him in there, assuming that's what happened. They chase him in. He shuts the door before they get there and shoots somebody coming through the door. Yes. That is then a barricaded subject, and you are supposed to stop. Because there's a chance that whoever's in there with him is going to live. When he started shooting again, it's, like I said, get a table, get a car and drive it through the wall, do whatever you got to do to make it happen. You have to do it.
Figure it out, right.
Yeah, man. And I wasn't there, you know. I wasn't there. Who knows? I might have been shaking in the corner, there, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, damn. But that's what you want to see. That's what I would want. That's what I would want. And I know there's people that disagree with, like, charging the shooter, but that's how we were trained, was to... They're like, you literally have to, like, forget everything you ever learned, and they're like, just run at them, just try to get to them, because they're
eliminate
probably
the
going to
threat.
kill themselves.
Right.
That's exactly that's the term that's used. You eliminate the threat. Do whatever it takes. It doesn't matter. You're going to get hurt. And hope you live. Just hope you live. So it's just terrible, man. Terrible situation.
So, kind of, just like any other thing that happens in the news, often. Who's the first to report to something, so everybody rushes to it regardless of how much facts that they have. Yeah. And that was like, I remember 15 years ago, I talked about I just despise CNN because they were like the world's worst at it. Like they wanted to be the first to report on something. And I remember this happening specifically with the school shooting up in the Northeast, Sandy Hook. Where they just had that thing totally wrong to start with, you know, and I was watching it in real time, and it was just like a whole unfortunate thing. And eventually all the facts came out, but this had a similar phenomenon where I don't recall hearing it, at least in the initial reports, that he shot his grandmother, then took off in a car chase. Police at some point intervened or got involved, chased him off. He crashed, I think it was a truck, into the ditch. He jumps the school fence. The police go to chase him. He gets inside of what was supposed to be a locked door. What happened was a teacher unlocked the doors to go get her phone out of her car, went back in, didn't lock the door behind her, which, I'm sure that teacher in particular is kind of doing what you talked about earlier, laying up late at night and probably blaming this all on herself. And it's not her fault. It's not her fault. A criminal, somebody who was insane, did what they did.
Right.
So I want to make that point too while I'm at it. But anywho, so then he gets inside the school, does what you said he did. He locked himself in. They were unable to get in, and unfortunately started taking lives at some point. Now, where that happened in the timeline, I'm not sure. But originally, a part of the initial reports, it was just that, somebody got inside the school. There's a school shooting. There's some children believed to be dead, perhaps staff, and that the police were outside for at least 45 minutes and not doing anything. Now it turns out 78 minutes before the police did anything. They were outside of the building. Furthermore, they were actually holding back citizens from going in and getting their own children.
And that I can say did happen because I've seen footage.
Yeah, there's definitely footage that has broken out since, but there was parents literally getting inside of the building and retrieving their children out and getting out, actually stopping their children from potentially dying. So me as a parent, I do the same thing, regardless of what task or obstacle was in my way, regardless of, and police actually did tase some parents trying to go inside the building because they were trying to restrain them from doing so to retrieve their children, which isn't a good look either. Right. And I understand they have procedures and protocols that they have to follow, but I mean, I'm sorry, in my own, it's easy for me to say because I'm talking about it in a vacuum. In good faith, I don't think I could stop a parent from going and getting their kids, especially as a parent myself, regardless of what your fucking standard operating procedures said that you needed to do in this situation. It's just, none of us can really say what we would do in the moment.
That situation.
Yeah, because fortunately we haven't had to deal with it in that moment.
Yeah. No, man, you're right. Yeah, the whole stopping the parent thing is crazy, is what it is. It makes no sense. There's no way that you can, especially to use force against them is nuts. There's a crime scene, or you maybe, the way I picture it at least, is there's active gunfire, and they're trying to get in there. If it was all calm and quiet, and they're like, look, we're going to try and get a SWAT team here, we're going to get a negotiator, then, guess what, parents, you're going to have to wait, because what if you go and jeopardize this situation? But if there's gunfire, dude, you get in there and do what you got to do. And that's, unfortunately, that's the in hindsight, you got to get in there, and you just got to get it done, and it just sucks.
It was not an active hostage situation in that sense. Now, again, I don't know the exact timeline. I can't say, 5 minutes until they heard gunshots or whatever the case is. But the police specifically said, the officers that were on the property said that they did not want to be shot. That's why they did not go into the building. And the police chief himself said that there was a failure to, they said there was no excuse for what took place. So, there's clearly some wrongdoing, misdoing, however you want to label it. Fact is, shouldn't have ever had to address that type of issue, though. And that's where you kind of get into the gun control talk as well. So people are gonna say, and I've taken this viewpoint many times myself, what's the necessity of a high capacity magazine? What's the necessity of an assault rifle? And commonly people go back, well, that's my Second Amendment right, and I need that if the government's going to take over, and if I'm going to have to deal with a tyrannical government. Well, I got a news flash for you folks, especially present day. You can have whatever weapons you want. You ain't going to be able to stand up to the U.S. military. They've got bombs that they can drop that can suck the oxygen out of a given square mile space. Yeah. I don't think your AR-15 is going to do much for you, or your AK-47 that you might have.
Correct.
It's not really going to do a lot for you whenever the U.S. military is dropping chemical warfare on you if they really want to put the kibosh on you and your uprise.
Yeah, so, that's what you gotta assume, right? That's what they'll do.
But there's a lot of things we can do before we start taking people's guns away, which again, I try to be reasonable and try and meet people in the middle here. So, things like universal background checks.
Common sense gun laws.
Yeah, common sense gun laws, of course. Some of the red flag laws that have been rescinded and peeled back in many respects, that people can do. And essentially what red flag laws are, if you don't, I'm just going to put it in a common context here. It's basically your ability to rat out somebody that you're afraid has mental illness. Essentially, the cops show up, they seize your weapons until you don't have a mental illness, or at least it's been proven that you don't.
Or you're deemed fit to own the weapon or whatever.
I mean, if we can talk about, in Japan, what their laws are, there's an extensive process.
Oh, yeah.
You have to apply for a gun permit. You have to go for gun training. You have to be interviewed by the police. You also have to conduct some of that shooting, I believe, in front of an officer as well. Then you have to take, I think, a polygraph test. I mean, it's insane what you have to do in other countries. I understand we're talking about America here and people who love their guns. And I know that you possess guns yourself and are qualified and trained to have them. Yeah. So I'm not trying to dog on you specifically, but
no.
Unfortunately, it's the rotten apples that ruin it for the bunch,
right?
You know?
And that could be said for the police forces too. Just one bad officer shouldn't be able to speak for our entire department. You know what I mean? In that light,
yeah, definitely. That comment goes in multiple ways and strikes in multiple lanes,
for sure.
But yeah, so obviously the immediate thing is let's abandon all assault rifles and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that that's not an answer, but there's definitely things that we can do before we take that step.
Right,
too,
before we go to that.
Could definitely make
step.
an impact.
Right.
Maybe increasing the age, the minimum age, which the House just passed. I think I forget the wording specifically, but
Protect Our Children Act.
Yeah, it certainly covers AK-47s and AR-15s or whatever the case, but you have to be 21 rather than 18. Well, then the immediate reaction to that is, well, I can die for my country and I can fire an AR-15 in the military at 18, but I can't at 21. Well, honestly, I don't necessarily find that to be appropriate at 18, that you have to, mandatory sign up for draft or, you don't have a fully functioning brain at 18 years old.
No,
you shouldn't
surely
make
don't.
Adult decisions. I thought I was a badass. I thought I was an adult whenever I was 18. I thought I knew everything. I don't know jack shit. I don't know jack shit today, my friend.
Still don't know
my
jack
brain
I know
still
that I
is
don't
not
know jack
functioning
shit today.
So let's be clear. My brain doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
So,
But I think to at least start with more common sense things like the red flag laws, like minimum ages, limiting high capacity magazines, actually having universal background checks that we enforce, getting rid of the gun show loopholes specifically, which are absurd anyways, because that's the places that these types of things are going to happen. What's ridiculous in Texas specifically, this is another thing that just totally absurd about this whole situation. I believe that the law is that you have to be 21 to purchase a pistol, but this kid was able to go purchase an AR-15.
Two of them.
Yeah, two.
He amassed two assault rifles.
So how does that make any sense? It's backwards. It really should have been the other way around.
Was what I imagine.
There's a lot of common sense things that could be done before.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and is what I imagine as far as the 21 thing. So handgun deaths in the country far outweigh rifle. But
absolutely.
When you get into mass shootings, it's all rifle. So it's kind of like which one? But and then if you look at stats, you guys ever look at the it's called the UCR, the Uniform Crime Report that the FBI puts together, and it's generated from all the stats that police agencies submit in their reports. So if you submit a gun crime report, it's then going to be tallied into the UCR. I think they only have up to 2020 currently. It takes them a long time to compile this data. But when you look at it, it's murder, most likely to commit, white male, under 25. And so it's kind of it might be, I'm not saying no white people can own guns. I'm saying that 25 might be a starting point age-wise, and I know, you can go fight when you're 18, but the government's going to train you. You get trained how to use it. They don't just throw it in your hands and start blasting. You get trained, and
context entirely different.
Right.
Yeah. It is, and maybe if you go serve in the military for 4 years, you get out, you can get a gun early, whatever. I'm fine. See, and I'm pretty big into
if you're licensed and certified, why not?
Yeah, for sure. And I have lots of guns. I got 2 ARs. I got lots of handguns. I don't shoot them as much anymore because ammo's expensive and I'm cheap. But it's one of those things that do I love AR-15 so much that I'm really willing to see this on the news? These kids every year? Nah. I don't like it that much. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Well, and as a parent
Yeah,
too, though, you know, being worried or scared about sending your children to public school, like, I don't think in a modern 2020 United States that should be an issue, and it is. You know what I mean? It's just
you would hope.
it's beyond fathomable to me.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and like, it's crazy. So like, yeah, it's cool that we can have guns. Yeah, we're supposed to be able to fight the government. Barrett, like you already said, man, like, people are living with delusions of grandeur. Like, it's not going to be some private.
Exactly.
If you're going to fight the military, it's not going to be a one-on-one fight. You're going to be fighting like a squad, which includes like a guy with a grenade launcher, and
The most advanced military in the world.
Yeah,
It's literally
like, you're living. Yeah, you're living in a
it's
fantasy
bringing
land.
a knife to a bomb fight.
Yeah, exactly, and that's right. Yeah, if you ever even see a soldier, you'd be lucky, because most of the time it's going to be, oh, this guy won't come out, and he's got these problems. And like, do I want that to happen?
Drone?
No. Would it be a huge problem if the government started going around taking stuff? Yeah, I wouldn't like it. But at the same time, it's like stupid to just keep doing it the same way. So there's got to be something. I think, universal
We've got to do
background check,
something.
I don't care. I don't care about that at all, because I can pass a background check all day. It doesn't matter to me. I think it should happen for everybody.
Who has a problem with that?
Right.
That's the thing I think is absurd. It's like, if you're a law-abiding citizen,
You
like,
should want that, right?
So this kind of gets into that political argument paradox too, is the fact that the party of criminal justice and supporting the police has an issue with background checks often.
Yeah,
I don't want to overgeneralize it too much, but
it's a farce.
At least political agendas, and it all goes back to the NRA being in a lot of those folks' pockets, and they want gun sales to go up. That's all there is.
Yeah.
So it's just
totally
absurd
bizarre.
that people think that it's. The people that want to be the party of crime and reform and all that's and justice and what have you, law and order. That's the phrase we should use. Law and order. That's the party of law and order. And they're not about background checks. I mean, come on, man.
Right.
That's
Flip
the
on
least
this, but
reasonable
flop on
thing.
that. That's my problem.
Exactly
No
right.
consistency. You know what I mean?
And they just had an NRA convention that guns weren't allowed inside the building because Trump and Abbott were speaking in it. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, right.
Come on. Where does the hypocrisy stop at?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and it almost seems like it's too, like, I hate to say it like this, but like, it's so far gone. You know what I'm saying? And like, you don't have like, it's too, and not too far gone as in you can't ever do anything about it, but too far gone as in there's so many, like, it's like, whoops, we can't go back in time to change this one. Now everybody's got a rifle. It's like, what are you going to do? But I think going forward, just like, I can't remember. I know the Vegas shooter, he bought his gun, weirdly the same gun that this guy used, which is bizarre, but like, it was the same brand and everything. He bought his and then carried out his attack. This dude bought his and carried out his attack. I think there's been a few other ones. It's sad that I don't only have a few to pick from, and there's like a million, and I can't even keep them straight. But a lot of them aren't like, oh,
right.
I think Sandy Hook used his dad's. Is that right? I don't know if you guys know. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I believe that's correct. But then some of the other major examples more recently is the Orlando nightclub, Parkland, as well. I believe those. Well, the point I'm making is they were all AR-15s involved in those shootings. The kid in Michigan, I can't recall what he took here recently. I believe it was an AR-15 as well. I just saw a stat here in the last few days of mass shootings all the way back to Sandy Hook, and like 98% of them involved AR-15s. Buffalo, that just happened here recently at the shopping plaza. That too was AR-15. So
it's pretty.
The AR-15, the point of the weapon is it can do a lot of damage in a short window.
It's specifically designed to.
It's designed to do what they are doing with them.
Right.
Yeah. So these AR and people have, and you can always tell when they have like a very whatever where their opinions are when they'll start focusing on like the name of the gun. It's like, well, ARs doesn't mean assault rifle. It's like, okay, great, but like it.
Right.
So so AR shoot, like Army or military shoots 5.56 out of their rifles. Okay. So it fits into a regular AR, and it's just a bigger bullet, like the actual lead part's bigger, and then it's got more powder in it, so it's a little harder hitting. But essentially, those rifles are designed to like maim people in combat. That's what they're for. But the crazy thing is is that
Right,
like it's on
right.
the lower spectrum of stuff you can get. Now I'm not saying it's so low, just keep them around. I'm just saying like there's a bunch.
Sure.
They have stuff chambered in like 7.62 by 3.9, which is what an AK shoots, and it's like the actual projectile is massive, and it's considerably more damage.
Yeah.
They make ARs chambered in, I believe, 308, which is like a deer hunting round, and you can shoot them out of an AR. And it's just
Yeah.
Yep.
It is.
absolutely wild.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, and again, I have many guns. I like guns. I hunt. I shoot. I like the cops. I was a cop. I think people should be allowed to own guns, but there's gonna have. But I don't think kids should get killed in school. So we got to find something that's gonna. The more important thing is not that I
Right.
enjoy hunting and like shooting. It's probably that kids are dying at school. So that's the main thing that needs to get addressed here.
But that being said, and you've already made this point in a roundabout way, is that you can still do those things. Just because we're taking an AR-15 off the table doesn't, and that's just to use one example, and I'm just making it real simple. You know, you can still hunt. Nobody's telling anybody they can't hunt.
Right.
You know, but
I
when
don't
I'm
use
seeing
an
this
AR
absurd
too,
shit with, you know, representatives, most folks don't. I mean, I've seen people use it to deer hunt, but I see shit. There's like representatives right now making arguments that they need them to shoot rabid coons, and prairie dogs,
foxes, and
it's just absurd. It's not necessary, and I
They're
guarantee you
getting overrun
that's
out
not
there.
actually what you're using them for.
Nah, of course.
Oh,
It's
I
not.
know.
And that's the thing.
It's
That's
guys
the
in
thing, and, like,
Alabama and Texas,
Yeah.
of course, so the usual actors that you'd suspect making these comments.
And that's, I mean, like, I'm going to admit it. I think an AR is kind of cool looking. It fulfills my small childhood dream of having, like, a cool looking gun. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I get to pretend to be Rambo. Like, I'll admit it. I think they look neat. All right? But my enjoying of the way they look doesn't balance out. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if you guys have ever shot one of those. And I'm sure the reason that people use them for these attacks, they don't kick.
I see it.
Tunk, 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 tunk. It's just a straight line, and it's just all day. And like, and so as far as the hunting argument, all right, because I do believe I think hunting is very important. I think it's a good thing. I think you should be able to hunt. You should be able to have guns.
It's necessary.
You can't have more than 10 rounds in your mag when you're hunting. You have to have a blocked magazine if the game warden catches you.
Right.
So you don't. Ergo, you don't need to have that many. Like, do I have a bunch of 30-round mags? Yeah, I do. But going forward, maybe there could be, like you said, there's common sense stuff. Like maybe these 21-year-old or 18-year-old or whatever they are don't need to have access to this stuff. And maybe it should be 25.
And that's
and
going
10-round
back
mags.
to your point, Barrett.
Yeah.
That's going back to your
Just-
point, Barrett. You know, he talked about the game warden, and you have to have the magazine block in your gun. Everybody's okay with that. Nobody has a problem with that law at all. You know what I mean? Hunters.
I'm sure
people
but
do
they're not
violate
making a
it, but
political agenda.
it's not a political statement, right? You know what I mean? And that's where I think the biggest issue lies is it's all politics. Like, we can't set aside what we really need to do because we're so wrapped up in our political ideology and who we think we are and who we need to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And it's easy for us to sit here and talk about this forever long. I don't want to gloss over it too much because there is some other stuff, and I know you're being generous with your time with us, and we appreciate it. I want to hit on, but I don't suspect we're going to fix all the world's problems in today's conversation.
Probably not.
I kind of wanted to get back to some of the. I think again back to I did want to kind of hit on some of the George Floyd, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice type stuff. But I think kind of where I was trying to start to plant that seed earlier was the fact that I think a lot of that goes back to over policing and some of the things, again, some of the more historical examples that I didn't use earlier. And I should make this point earlier whenever I made my definition of what over policing is. It has been found to, in most cases, be in poor communities and involving minorities, more particular black and brown people, quite frankly. I'll just leave it that simple again. But to get back historically, whenever this has happened more recently, so like if everybody remembers in 2020 when Mayor Bloomberg was running for president, and they were hammering him on the stop and frisk stuff that he did. That was 2013. It was found by a court that they were infringing upon people's civil liberties, and they were literally stopping a high number of black and brown people in particular in poor communities and making arrests that ultimately didn't yield into anything as far as charges were concerned. And so it became a matter of them constantly racially profiling. And if people remember, too, Mayor Bloomberg made the comment that they asked, I think one of the interviewers asked him, do you have anything that you want to apologize about? And he just coldly said, I don't, because I already apologized about it. I've met with people, I've met with leaders in the black community and received advice and so on and so forth, which came off very cold and callous. However, it didn't, change the fact of what he had already did. The damage was done. It still goes on today. The example I used earlier with We Own the City, it was kind of the same thing that they did there. So like the over-policing thing, that starts to plant the seeds of police mistrust and those sorts of things going on. And then when you see something like Michael Brown, for example, kind of the BLM movement that blew up after that, and that's a little bit closer home for us, so it's easy for us to talk maybe a little bit more about Michael Brown than some other folks because it was so close to home, and whether or not we knew him, we may know people that knew him or people that were aware of him or met his acquaintance or his family's acquaintance. And, now it's almost been 10 years later, which is crazy to think, but that kind of spawned a whole, and it's not to say that these types of acts didn't happen before that, but, when somebody has their hands up in the air and says, my hands are up, please don't shoot. And that's kind of where that phrase has gotten into the chants with the BLM and that sort of stuff. For what they originally were getting him for, I think it was like a convenience store, an alleged convenience store theft or something to that effect. And oddly enough, the George Floyd thing was very similar, is that lives are not worth that.
Right.
At the end of the day.
You're to enforce the law, not be the judge, the jury, and the executioner, right?
And, but I think a lot could be said about the police's decisions that they made, the training that they had. Your knowledge of those situations and what took place of them, can you speak to at least the training that you had in your history and talk about where somebody may have went wrong?
Yeah, sure. So,
and I don't know how fresh this stuff is in your memory either. So I know I'm calling
it's been a minute.
10 years old. So I'm sorry.
It's been how many years since 2016 is when I left.
But even yeah.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. So like 2016 is when I left, and but that you're not you're trained to handle these situations, right? But. And unfortunately, so we're gonna go backwards a little bit. So the Tamir Rice, right? So is he 12 when this happens? I think I can't remember.
Yeah,
12, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You roll up. If you roll up.
I know preteen years for sure.
He points a gun at you, or he has the gun up, and it's like, do you risk not? You think maybe it's a BB gun? I hope I don't. Because here's the thing: every bit of training that I ever went through. Every case law that comes out, all the stuff, unfortunately, it's paved with dead cops. And all this, the reason you shoot until the threat stops is because too many times has somebody gone to shoot someone in the leg, they hit him in the leg, well, guess what? That's not fatal. And then they shoot you, and then you're dead. And it's just anyway, so... From that point of view, it's the worst situation. No one wants to shoot a kid ever. But you get there, you've got a gun, and it's make your choice right there, and everything you know about it is if somebody points a gun at you, you're gonna die. And it's you make this choice. So even though it's a horrible outcome, I don't if it would have been me, it would have been the same thing probably. And that's it doesn't feel good to say that or think about it, but it's just that's kind of the truth on that one. The Breonna Taylor. Hindsight being what it is, they probably should have not, and they should have tried to call him back out of the hallway or out of the room or whatever, because she was back there. I know they'll try, news Absolutely. Or whoever will try to, not slander, but they'll be her boyfriend was a drug dealer, and she was probably helping sell drugs.
Yeah.
So what's the penalty for that? Some jail time? Or do you get murdered in your bed? No, you just call him out. Right. Call him out, and it's just that one's bad outcome on that one for sure. And the whole Michael Brown thing.
Yeah.
Again, he robbed a gas station earlier in the day. He thought that's what the cop was going to go talk to him. The cop had no idea. No, there's no
just a guy in the road. I don't honestly even remember as much. He had his hands up at one point, I guess, is how I remember it. And then all I know, he said he got hit in the face and thought he was losing consciousness, which can be statistically, and not to pull out my trump card, statistically, cops, if you lose consciousness, you get killed with your own gun. It's happened a bunch of times. It happened to a guy I went to the academy with and his partner at the same time with his service weapon. That guy killed them both.
Wow.
Because he knocked him out. Yeah. And it's just it's one of those things that if that's really what happened, because it's his, or because the media is going to paint it like Michael Brown's. Oh, look, he's some jerk and he robbed a gas station. Yeah, and he did, and he might have been a jerk, but it didn't have to go down that way. Now, if he's getting, I can't remember the cop's name now. If he's getting punched in his car and he's about can you step on the gas?
Derek.
You can pull your.
It was either Derek or Daryl.
Daryl.
What's
God dang it, Daryl.
Daryl,
what have you
Derek
done?
Chauvin is the
Daryl's.
Daryl.
all these
Damn
fucking
it,
Daryls. But Derek Chauvin is the guy with the George Floyd thing. So, but
Yes,
I remember
his.
he
Yeah,
was
that's
on
fresh.
kind of the big hubbub with that too. He was on paid administrative leave while they were sorting all.
Yeah.
Darren Wilson.
Darren Wilson.
Darren
That's
Wilson.
right.
Nice.
And but that people get all up in arms about that, and I agree, it's absurd. However, there are police unions, and this is how this works with all police officers, regardless of what they did. In a lot of instances, you go on paid administrative leave while things are sorted out.
Yep.
So if you've got a problem with that, you can't have it on a case-by-case scenario. You got to have it with all police.
Right.
You got to have it with police unions, and I'm not saying I'm pro-police union or anti or whatever. You know,
Needs to be
I'm actually
standard.
pro-union for the most part. However, nonetheless, don't cherry pick when you're going to have a problem with it. Too,
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
No, yeah, man. No, I'm with you 100%. And and that's what people that they put him on paid administrative leave. I guess that investigation's going to be short. It's like, well, no, because it's the same thing as being innocent until proven guilty. It's the same thing. They can't be like, oh, hey, you go home,
Right.
we'll pay for you because somebody accused you of this. Now, and like you said, you can't cherry pick. So even if it's clearly
they're going to do the same
cops
thing
in
with
the
an
wrong.
alleged
Serial killer.
an alleged rape,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
or molestation, or you
let's
just
bring
throw
it
any
full-
charge out there, they will do the same thing.
Full circle, crazy lady go to Osawatomie State Hospital. If she says I assaulted her in that car, guess what I'm getting? Paid admin leave until they figure it out. That's exactly what they're going to do, which is what I should still get paid. I didn't do anything wrong. But even in the cases where they did obviously do something wrong, Derek Chauvin or whatever, then obviously he's in the wrong. And as far as I'm aware, you get paid on your paid admin leave, and then if you don't get that, you're not getting that money if you're on leave for committing crimes. You don't get it. So that's how it should be anyway. I don't know how that goes because I've never been found guilty of anything. But yeah, it's wild. But people get really up in arms about the admin leave stuff or the paid leave. It's like, well, of course you get paid leave. They're going to figure out what happened. But people get bit out of shape. But
people often look at it from their own perspective as well, and that's me. I could say I don't get paid leave if I have to be inspected or an investigation has to take place, like a HR violation or whatever. So people already have an animosity for the fact that police officers are granted that. Well, hey, if you don't like it, go union up, go join something with a union where you maybe got some more rights, people advocating for you. Go be a police officer, but hey, I'll get back full circle here now. Yeah. Let's go see what they make and what they have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you aren't interested in that job, too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's I got paid. I know. Sorry, I don't want to make you guys. I can literally talk about this stuff for days. So you're gonna have to.
Oh no, you're fine.
We'll talk as long as you want to talk.
Right, as long as you can talk.
Brother,
Okay.
I've had I've had people for 3.5 hours. So
okay. Because I think the kids I'll probably have to go at some point because the kids are gonna go to sleep at some point. But so
sure, it's all good.
With that, right? So that's 100%. It's this weird cycle of not gonna get fixed is what it is. So I can go to the sheriff's office and I was making really good money. I can come here and go to St. Louis, where it's the murder capital of the United States, right? And make significantly less money. And then people are going to tell me that they're going to defund me and they don't want us to have the tools to do the job. And it's like, wait, what? And then the people are like, well, the cops, they don't need to have any funding. But then they're like, hey, they need more training. And it's like, well, how are you going to have more training without more funding? Or they'll like, the first thing they do is like, the cops only go to school for 6 months and they're handling these calls about somebody who had a mental health crisis. And it's like, they have to go to 911. You can't choose which 911 call to go to. You have to go if somebody needs you.
Right.
And like, you
Right, you gotta
try and do the
respond.
best
Right.
you can. And then people get bent out of shape, like current cops get bent out of shape with like the whole social worker thing. Because they're like, oh yeah, oh great, active shooter, send the social worker, send them out there, they'll take care of it, ha 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 ha. And obviously, that is not what is intended. What is intended is how they should do it, and as I believe they started doing in Kansas, or at least where I'm from, or was from, is you don't have one in the car. You've got somebody on the phone who they do mental health screenings. And when somebody calls you and says, oh, I'm not doing so good, I think I'm going to do something crazy, I think I'm going to, whatever, then guess what? They get to talk to that person. That person has a series of standardized questions they can ask them. And then if that person's like, yeah, they're going to go somewhere and do something, then the cops get to go and treat it like that. If they're just in their house by themselves, the cops don't need to be involved. Because there's been many times when police go to suicidal persons, and the cop, like, our whole thing, if we go and you're in the house by yourself, and you're like, I'm going to kill myself with a gun, it's like, I can't stop, like, I'm not going to go in there to stop, like, it's not even a crime to shoot yourself, like, you can do it. I don't tell them that, I don't want them to do it, oh, no, don't do that, leave it in there, come out here and talk to me, but we're not going to go in. We won't go wrestle a gun out of somebody's hand when they're in there by themselves. It's just not what happens. No one does that. They shouldn't do that. Because what you're going to do is you're going to force a confrontation. You force this confrontation with somebody who's already, they either want you
you're
to
going to
shoot them,
escalate it.
or you're going to escalate it. And here's the thing, you de-escalate for sure, but to some degree, I think I'm being told to be quiet. Yeah, I'm yelling. To some degree, you are, like, there's only so much you can do. And, like, to be totally honest with you, I was a talker. Like, I talked, like, clearly, right? I'd talk to people, and I could get them to do what I wanted for the most part, and I put that time in. But there's people that I worked with who they're not a talker. Like, that's not what they're there to, they didn't feel that they were there to do. They're there just to subdue, arrest, incarcerate, and go back and do it again. And, there is a time and place for that, 100%. And you got to know when that is, but it can be hard to get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes for people, I don't know. I'm sort of talking myself into a stupor, but. So.
No, but I think that this positions in another thing that I wanted to discuss too. Another more recent event that's taken place. I don't know if you saw what's went viral here in the last week or so in Arizona, where a homeless man drowned. I think he was 34. Yep. And there's like two police, like literally, actually, I think there's three police actually standing over him, explicitly saying that they're not going to help him. And the guy is like screaming out, like, "Oh, I'm drowning! I need help! Someone save me!" or whatever. They're like, "No, we're not going to help you." And there's like body cam footage of it out now, and they haven't revealed the names of the officers quite yet. But again, when people think about the virtuous job titles or the expectations or responsibilities of police officers, serve and protect.
Right.
When you hear those type of comments, and you think of these instances, you think, there really wasn't anything that you could have done to, help in this situation. Just to explicitly say we're not going to help you. I mean, at least the bedside manner could have been a little bit better, especially in somebody's final hours.
Don't say that to him. Really. Don't say that to him. Pretty much, because I did. Yeah. I went and watched that body cam footage, or what's been released. It's not the whole thing. I'm sure there's more to it. But like, they go, they're talking to the guy, and he like jumps over the railing and goes down this like big embankment. Like it's steep. Like it's not a drop. It's like he goes it's like 40 feet away, and then jumps in the water and starts swimming away.
Yeah.
And then start saying, like, "Oh, I can't swim. Oh, help, help." And they're like, "Look, dude, I'm not getting in there after you." And, like, to be to be totally honest with you, just from where I would have been like, I'm not getting in there after that guy. But then he died, and it's like, oh, whoops. Like, if they knew he was going to die, you would hope that they would go and get him. Like, go get him. Like, that's not a big deal. But here's the thing. I've never saved the drowning person, but I've heard that as soon as you put hands on them, they latch onto you and then you both drown. That's what I always heard. So you have to be really, really careful. And this guy was out in the water a little ways. And like, you don't say I'm not going to help you, though.
Yeah.
Don't say it. Like, you shouldn't say it. And, like, I don't know, like, criminally, they're not going to be held
There should be some
responsible.
kind of attempt to...
Yeah.
Maybe it's one of those things that could have further training on, but just sitting here talking about it from a practicality standpoint, you have a call, I'm not really still sure, and I still need to do a little bit more research on this. Like, what call? I mean, they got the call to go and intervene in this guy's situation, if you will. If somebody's near a body of water like that, I think it's a pretty good assumption, and they're acting, as if they have a mental illness. It's safe to assume that they may cause harm to themselves or others. Okay, let's start there. If you're near a body of water, what's the likelihood that they're going to jump into that body of water? Okay,
All right.
so that's another real possibility. So, I, as a business that has a body of water inside of it, am required to have life-saving devices, a lasso and a lifesaver in and of itself, and rope. I don't see what's so hard about equipping officers with that, perhaps in the trunk of their car.
Right.
In the event that something like that does play out unsuspectingly. I mean, I understand storage space is limited, but I'm just trying to be reasonable here and think of a practical solution. What's so hard about, perhaps in those situations, if they do present themselves, that you don't have those tools at hand, especially with the 3 officers there. And again, in a vacuum, I understand I wasn't there. I didn't deal with it. But you got 2 officers on the bank. One could go for retrieval. You could have his life safety rope, and that's that. So I just don't find that to be an unreasonable expectation.
Right.
No. Yeah,
I agree with
I'm
that.
down. I'm down.
And what's the
for
cost
that,
of those
too.
things?
Yeah,
It's insignificant.
Negligible, yeah.
You know?
There's everybody, assuming they haven't been completely defunded, they should have enough money to buy like some rope or like a quick.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, a little. Anyway, like a quick inflate whatever with a CO2 cartridge thing. It pops it. But like
Exactly.
so in the video, so they get
Exactly
called
right.
there because male and female are fighting at the water's edge or at the balcony or whatever, the pier, and so it's a homeless female, homeless male.
Yeah.
And like he's acting all weird, and he like just climbs over and goes, and like they're not there for any sort of crime. They were just yelling, and the lady's like, "Oh, we disagree," and we get really loud. She's like, "We weren't like fighting or saying anything bad." And they're like, "Okay, we're just trying to see what's happening." And then he's just like, whoop, leg over, goes down, jumps in the water, and swims off. But then says he's drowning. And like at that point, I would not have gotten that water. But like you said, if there's 3 of you, be like, "Hey, this guy's being an idiot," and then we start saying I'm drowning. And then that's because now there's like a life-saving event happening, right?
Yes.
And then get the third officer to go
Right.
get
Yes.
something out of the
Yes.
trunk. And even if you don't have to Terminator run down there and dive in and swim out into the ocean or whatever to go get him. But
Right.
take off your duty belt, wade into the water, get the rope, try to throw it to him, call him back, and when he actually goes under and is clearly not like playing a game or whatever, then it's going to be time to step it up.
Do
Step
something.
it up and do something.
Right.
Do something. Right. Do something.
Right.
You got a badge.
Yeah.
You got a badge in your chest, and it's not like
Yeah.
the bare.
Just
It's
sit-
not the bare minimum badge. It's like you got to do what you got to do. You have to do it. Like that's the whole point. That badge
Right.
represents the faith that the community has put into you to you wear this thing. And yeah, it's a piece of metal. You can order them off eBay. But if you think it means something to you, and you can hold yourself to that higher standard, then you might just save somebody, or you might do something good. So it can be hard, but it's also
Right.
Absolutely.
not. It's also not hard to treat people like maybe they are really going to drown and you should help them.
Human
Or maybe
beings.
they really,
Right.
they
Like
really,
other
they
human
really,
beings,
they
right.
really can't breathe. You know what I mean? And like that's something I told other people. Kind of just to flip it back to the George Floyd is like because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that guy's he's full of it. Because and like and then I watched it again. I'm like, oh wait, now he's been on his neck for like a really long time. And we in Academy, they're like, do not. Your knee can go if somebody's really fighting you and you're trying to cuff them, and you can put your knee on there for like 5 seconds or less. They're like, because you are going to injure that person significantly. Do not do it unless you have to do it. But other than that, you don't kneel on their neck. You can put your leg there so they can't throw their head back or whatever. You can't kneel on it. And then, but the whole I can't breathe thing, people, like, the first thing they do as soon as you jump on them, like, and then not for, oh, hey, you're walking a dog, have a leash, let me tackle you. When there's a legit reason, when you are on them, the first thing they say is, I can't breathe. Can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe. And so, honestly, for me, when I watched that video, I almost was like desensitized to it. Like that's the first thing they say. That's the first thing somebody says when you jump on them is I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously the guy couldn't breathe because he's dead. And I never squished anybody that long.
Right.
But if you can't kneel on them like that, but just that statement, I can't breathe. They'll say everything. My cuffs are too tight and I can't breathe. And I've had people, oh, my cuffs are too tight. Oh my God, I can't. My hands are turning purple. Help, help, help. And like we check them. It's your thumb and forefinger touch around there. And like if you go and you're like, hey man, I'll loosen them up. I've had people try to turn on me. I've had people jump on me trying to loosen their cuffs. And it's just like you get desensitized, which is in that sad. It kind of goes back to like the whole seeing people like. Not subhuman, but certain people you just like, they're not,
right.
They're ruining society is what it feels like. Now that I'm detached from it,
yeah.
It's kind of faded from me.
Right.
But I remember feeling that way. So at some certain points, I wouldn't say that I thought people were animals or anything ever, but it was just like, gosh, there's a certain look. There's a certain look.
I can definitely, I can relate because, being in the Ironton area, I had to deal with a lot of the drug culture, quite frankly.
Yeah, man.
Where I lived at specifically, unfortunately lost my father to a battle of addiction. So, I've seen it firsthand. I see what it does. I see what it does to people. I see how people act on it. I've seen how people, treat other people on it. It's a really unfortunate thing. And I know that sounds... I guess somewhat desensitizing, I guess, and oversimplistic. But even I myself have to remind myself not to be. I can be jaded and I can be calloused myself, but I really try to make it a point. So, like last week, and this is kind of lighthearted, but last week we put up a classic episode of us when we were like 21, whenever we did the podcast back in the day, and we said a lot of stupid shit about homeless people specifically. And I deal with a lot of homeless people still yet today. And I do get very calloused with some of the folk that I have to deal with because unfortunately there's a subsect of that homeless community that there's mental illness issues, there's drug abuse issues, and often drug abuse is associated with mental illness. Don't let anybody tell you any differently.
Absolutely.
So, it's an issue that is larger than most of us are equipped to deal with, quite frankly, and even professionals have the most difficult time dealing with it. So I think the big takeaway that we can take from the conversation today, and you've made this point several times yourself, is that we have to try and not be jaded. Don't be gullible.
Right.
And it's easy to be calloused, but, we need to try and treat every situation, don't act like you haven't been there before, but also we don't know people often in these exchanges, like even with these examples with these officers and things that took place, like they didn't know these people on any level. And a lot of them jump to reactions, and we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I do it day to day. Unfortunately, it's part of my job. Police officers, it's part of their job. I'm sure, like convenience store workers, you can apply it to anybody, any trade, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, yeah, man, that's 100%. It's on the nose, but it's just you gotta do the best you can, and like to reiterate for sure. I'm like super down for like, again, you can't have a social worker in your car, but having that resource, because like the fact of the matter is, cops. You're there for criminal activity. You're not there for somebody who needs mental evaluation.
Right.
Psychological
jails are not
help.
mental health.
Right.
Yeah. Jails, if you think if somebody's having a psychotic break, the place to be is locked in a concrete room? Negative. It only makes it worse.
Egg. That's where I work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. Sag 'em. And it's like, don't. It's just like, it's not the... Unfortunately, though, like you said, there's there's addiction, there's the mental health issue, and then that essentially... you're like a social pariah, and there's going to be criminal activity at some level related to it most of the time. Some people can function, some can't. So even you're in the system, and you can't get out of the system, so you're perpetually there. And like even something as simple as like we touched on that really early on with like this, like the criminal justice system, which it has to be in place because like what else are we going to do basically?
Right.
But there's this cycle of like okay, so if let's say you're a single guy, you live in a state you're not from. You get you party and you get a DUI, okay? You lose your license, okay? You lose your job because you can't get to work because you lost your license. You can't drive. You were too far. You start riding a bike, but
Right.
You miss time, your
Right.
court date one day, and you're trying to ride to court. Well, you miss court, so now you got a warrant out for your arrest, okay? So then you're in jail and you miss your
Yes.
job interview for
Yes.
your next job. And then guess what? You're in jail, now you have all these court fees and fines and stuff, so you're going to trying to work to pay those
Exactly
off, trying
right.
to get a car, and then it keeps going
Snowballs.
and going and going, and then you're just like stuck in it forever, and you can never. Like,
Yes.
It's just, and then you start drinking to make things better, using drugs to make it seem not so bad, and then you get another DUI, or you get arrested for
Exactly
felony
right.
possession, and it's like
Yes.
it's just like that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
Out,
Yeah.
man.
And that,
Let me catch murderers.
and to further your point, to go full circle, the system sucks. Exactly what you said at
Yeah.
the beginning of the podcast. You know what I mean? The system is fucked, and we've got to figure something out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You gotta
I
find-
can
you
speak
gotta-
to that. I'm glad you portrayed that example that you used exactly, because I had an uncle. The exact thing happened to him, and also we'll sprinkle in like custody dispute stuff too.
Mhm.
So like unpaid child support was kind of his big issue that he had. So that was his criminal infraction,
Yeah.
and he wasn't able to keep a job. And whenever he wasn't able to keep a job,
He lost his
they
license.
took his license
'cause he couldn't pay
and
his
then
child
he couldn't
support.
take a job. Then he couldn't have a job
Yep.
unless he had transport. So it was like a vicious cycle where he could never really help himself. Fortunately, he got out of it eventually, but people often don't in his situation. And he was an alcoholic to boot. So,
How could you not be with all those
how are you
things
going to
happening
give
to you?
people a platform to help themselves? Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just it's great. Right? How can you help? That's the thing, and then you start wondering if it's like there's an old saying, I don't know who said it, but they're like, if the penalty for a crime is a fine, then it only exists for poor people, and that's true.
Right.
And that's where you get into, and this we might have to
That's
do
right.
this another. I'm gonna have to come back and talk to you guys about this, because that's where you get into. They're like, oh, cops are racist. It's like, not. Like if you look at arrest stats, it's not that crazy, but it's the conviction
Right.
rates are nuts, absolutely
Yeah.
wild, and just as far as like
Right.
white people getting like whatever, you can go do community service, and black people, oh no, you don't get we were just going to convict you of it right now. Usually it comes down to who had an attorney, who didn't, who could plead, who couldn't, and it'll be somebody who's statistically in a lower income area or lower income like housing,
Right.
or they just make less money. But yeah, if the penalty is a fine, it only exists to essentially keep poor people down, which is, you totally see it. And like you said with your uncle,
Right.
I always used to be like, how are you supposed to do this? Because they get arrested for non-payment of child support. How are you supposed to pay child support if you're in jail? Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
Work in the kitchen
Right.
for
Exactly
30
right.
cents a day?
Exactly
Like,
right.
it doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
Right.
Right.
it's wild.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of aspects of the system that's broken, and then we could even, like you said, I'll be happy to have you back on.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
we
I
could
keep
get into
rambling,
the for-profit prison systems.
Oh yeah, private
Well, the private prisons, the for-profit prisons. That's a huge issue, and I could spend 3 podcasts. On that.
Yeah.
I've
That
seen
is-
so much stuff, but
I don't know how that is remotely legal. There has been so many.
Yeah.
So
It
many.
shouldn't
like,
be.
I can think of like 4 or 5 that the judge, like, they proved in like whatever court that the judges were taking kickbacks for sentencing somebody to that for-profit prison, because that prison was giving them money for sending somebody to there. So they could, it's just like, it's always money related. That's insane to me. It's insane. But it's also
illegal
like,
corruption with
Yeah.
campaign donations and stuff.
oh
so.
my, yeah, like
Absolutely.
super PAC stuff. That's nuts too. It's
Yeah.
all crazy.
Yes,
it's just like
absolutely.
wild. It's just it's
and
a world. Yeah,
we were trending in the right direction with all that briefly,
yeah.
where they were banning
Yeah,
super
it's-
PAC donations and things of that ilk, but we immediately flipped right back.
Yeah,
One
they
thing I want to,
tried.
before we get off here too, I want to
Yeah.
encourage folks to check out, because we just name dropped the or for-profit prisons and the private prisons. You got to check out a documentary called The 13th. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix. If you have never seen it, even if you're not a big documentary person, if you like, Killer Mike, for example, he's in it. So Van Jones is in it, who's a pundit commonly on CNN. There's a lot of folks that are in it, but it's called The 13th, and it's essentially talks about the marriaging of ideas, the fact that the current prison system and the criminal justice system is actually a modern day form of slavery in many respects. And they talk about how that is in particular. And it gets into some of the themes that we talk about, whether it's an ethnicity or it's a, clamping down on poor people specifically, so on and so forth. But it's a very interesting documentary worth watching and people to check out too.
Right on. I haven't seen it, so I'll need to get.
Have you ever seen that?
It. No.
Yeah, it's worthwhile.
Right on.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Killer Mike's dad
hey,
was
man.
an Atlanta cop too.
Yes, he was, and he is very pro police in many respects too. He does a lot of community talks. He has several barbershops. He invests in the community. He actually had Bernie Sanders down there several times to talk to people.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
He does a lot of political advocacy, Killer Mike specifically. So run the jewels.
Oh yeah.
RTJ baby.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Skyler, man, thank you for your time.
Thank you, dude.
Hey,
we appreciate
thanks.
it so much.
I enjoyed this one.
And we definitely want to have you back on.
Absolutely.
I got
man.
a buddy too that I dropped a little bug in his ear. His name's Brian Jones. Jesus Rose. He's an R&B artist out on the West Coast. I talked to him sometime about coming back on because he's got some very interesting police experiences and living up in the St. Louis area. Sometime I'd like to actually have both of you on at some point.
Yeah.
And he seemed to be game for the idea.
That'd be
talking
awesome.
about some of his experiences and how that would be appropriately handled or under a more ethical person in the police system. So
Sure.
I kind of wanted to pull you in for that discussion because I know you're a good guy and you did it for all the right reasons, but there are unfortunately exceptions to that.
Right.
Those employments in the police too. So, and unfortunately they're the people that make the news, like the Derek Chauvins and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Well, yeah, I'm happy to do it. You just let me know, and it was a pleasure. Hopefully, I didn't ramble along too much, and I still got lots of stuff rattling around up there in my head. So you guys just let me know. I'll be happy to come back on and talk.
Oh, I'm sure we left a lot of stuff on the table, but I feel like we had a really good smorgasbord conversation at least get things started, and we'll be happy to have you back on. And again, thank you so much for your time. You've been so gracious with it.
Yep. Thanks, man.
Thank you guys.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it. Yep, dude.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.
This is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses, whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop. We will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.